Ladies and gentlemen, if you can take, please, your seats. We are about to start officially the meeting. Please. I call the order of the meeting. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We will now continue the general debate under item 5A of our agenda. I was informed that we have a rather long list of speakers, so I will make a plea to all of the speakers to be as concise and as short as possible, so in order to give ample opportunities for as many speakers to speak before we stop the meeting. So, as announced earlier, for the general debate, I would appreciate, of course, as I said, speaking the 3 minutes rule, so this will help to proceed. So, having that in mind, I recognize and kindly invite the esteemed representative of Algeria to take the floor.
شكرا سيادة الرئيس. تعد السياسة المنتهجة للجزائر في مجال حماية حقوق الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة وترقيتهم تتوافق مع الاتفاقيات الدولية ذات الصلة، فهي سياسة شاملة ومتكاملة حيث تهدف إلى الوقاية من الإعاقة والتربية والتعليم المتخصصين، وكذا الإدماج الاجتماعي والمهني والاقتصادي والثقافي والرياضي، قصد تحقيق استقلاليتهم وتمكينهم المشاركة في مختلف مجالات الحياة. تتكفل الجزائر بتربية وتعليم الأطفال ذوي الإعاقة على مستوى المؤسسات التربوية والتعليمية المتخصصة من خلال برامج تربوية وتعليمية مكيفة حسب خصوصية كل إعاقة، وكفيلة بتقديم الخدمات التربوية والتعليمية والنفسية والصحية. ولتشجيع إدماج الأطفال ذوي الإعاقة في الوسط المدرسي العادي، تم إنشاء المدرسة العليا للأساتذة للصم والبكم بهدف تقديم تعليم نوعي للتلاميذ ذوي الإعاقة السمعية للطور الثانوي. أما فيما يخص الإدماج المهني في إطار العمل اللائق وسبل العيش المستدام، فقد تم اعتماد سياسة شاملة وكاملة بمشاركة كل القطاعات الوزارية والهيئات العمومية والاقتصادية من أجل دعم وتمكين الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة من الحصول على العمل اللائق بهدف تحقيق استقلاليتهم المالية ومشاركتهم الفعلية في التنمية الاقتصادية للبلاد. وفي إطار تكافؤ الفرص، تم وضع عدة إجراءات لتسهيل وصول الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة لاجتياز المسابقات المهنية، لا سيما عن طريق تمديد مدة الاختبارات والامتحانات وتقديم مساعدة بشرية ومادية وحضور مترجم متخصص في اللغة الإشارة. كما يتم التركيز في عملية تشجيع انخراط الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة بشكل خاص على المرأة المعاقة الريفية في مجال المقاولاتية، مع ضمان الدعم والمرافقة لها من خلال تمكينها من إنشاء مشاريع مهنية. كما تم إطلاق دليل إلكتروني في هذه السنة في مجال الإدماج الاقتصادي، يهدف إلى توجيه ومرافقة الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة لإنشاء مؤسسات ناشئة ومؤسسات مصغرة مع دعم من الهيئات المالية العمومية. أما في المجال الاجتماعي، فقد تم وضع نظام خدمات وبرامج اجتماعية تتمثل في المنحة المالية والتغطية الاجتماعية والتجهيزات المتخصصة والاستفادة من مجانية النقل. كما تم تثمين المنحة المالية والمنحة الجزافية للتضامن في سنة 2023 من قبل سيد رئيس الجمهورية، الموجهة للأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة والعائلات المتكفلة بشخص ذو إعاقة أو أكثر، تسمح لهم العيش بكرامة. وقصد تمكين الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة من الوصول إلى المحيط المادي والاقتصادي والاجتماعي والثقافي، فقد تم إنشاء لجنة وصول الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة مكلفة بمتابعة وتقييم البرامج واقتراح كل التدابير.
I thank the esteemed representative of Algeria for his intervention, and now I give the floor to Nigeria.
Chair, persons with disability continue to be marginalized. They face disproportionate levels of discrimination and stigma and are prevented from full and effective participation in all aspects of public life. Being largely barred from participation in the decision-making process creates an obstacle to the enjoyment of rights related to education, employment, equality, and many more. In this regard, the entrenched exclusion and disadvantage of this group has implications for national and global development. It is imperative to know that lack of available and comparable data disaggregated by disability is a serious challenge. There are other disadvantaged groups which require further attention and research. For instance, deaf-blind persons, refugees, migrants, asylum seekers, displaced persons with disability, persons with disability living in rural areas, persons with disability living in poverty, people on the autism spectrum, and intellectual disability. I urge member states to strengthen their commitment to implementing CRPD, including other human rights instruments such as Universal Declaration of Human Rights and their optional protocols. The government of Nigeria has taken steps to prioritize promotion and protection of the inalienable human rights of persons with disability, now strengthened further by the passage of law on Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act 2018. The Act prohibits all forms of discrimination against persons with disabilities. Under its provision, defaulters will face a fine, imprisonment, or both depending on the gravity of discrimination. The Act provides for the rights and privileges of persons with disability in education, healthcare, prioritization in accommodation and emergencies, access to public transportation facilities. The Act also reserves 5% employment for persons with disabilities in all public organizations and gives persons with disability the right to file a lawsuit against any defaulter. The Act provides 5 years for all government buildings to have accessibility for persons with disability, and it also provides for the establishment of a commission to oversee its implementation. Despite this, however, persons with disability face numerous barriers, including accessibility to physical environments and on the internet, social inclusion, and absence of assistive technology, and barriers in healthcare services and in the workplace. In conclusion, Mr. Chair, Nigeria is committed to ensuring that persons with disability, including women and girls, and older persons, enjoy their full rights. Achieving the Sustainable Development Goals will be a mirage without free, full, meaningful, and development goals equal participation of and all societal activities on all equal basis. Nigeria stands ready to work with the United Nations and international partners in projecting and advancing the rights of persons with disability. I thank you.
I thank the esteemed representative of Nigeria for intervention, and I give the floor to Belarus.
Господин председатель, Беларусь предпринимает последовательные меры, направленные на социальную интеграцию людей с инвалидностью и улучшение качества их жизни. Соответствующая работа государственных органов ведется системно и направлена на формирование комплексного межведомственного подхода к социальной интеграции людей с инвалидностью, начиная от рождения до достижения ими материальной независимости и эффективного участия в жизни общества. В этих целях в стране осуществляется национальный план действий по реализации положений Конвенции о правах инвалидов. Координирует работу государственных органов в этой сфере Республиканский межведомственный совет по правам инвалидов, возглавляемый заместителем премьер-министра Республики Беларусь. В начале прошлого года вступил в силу закон о правах инвалидов и их социальной интеграции, который усовершенствовал нормы, касающиеся защиты прав, свобод и законных интересов людей с инвалидностью. В подготовке законопроекта приняли участие общественные организации, представляющие интересы разных категорий инвалидов. Законом установлен запрет дискриминации по признаку инвалидности. Регламентированы вопросы обеспечения доступности не только социальных объектов и жилых помещений, но и транспортной, производственной инфраструктуры, информации. Предусмотрено создание новой автоматизированной информационной системы по учету доступности объектов инфраструктуры. Закреплено понятие принципа инклюзии в образовании. Введен механизм квотирования рабочих мест для людей с инвалидностью, а жестовый язык признан полноценной лингвистической системой познания. Государством предпринимаются меры поддержки семей, воспитывающих детей с инвалидностью, ориентированные на создание благоприятных условий для воспитания таких детей в семейном окружении и заботе. Государство помогает семьям материально, инвестируя в систему пенсионных выплат и государственных пособий. В стране последовательно реализуется принцип инклюзии в образовании. Совершенствуются инструменты ранней комплексной помощи, которая оказывается в центрах коррекционно-развивающего обучения и реабилитации и направлена на максимально раннее выявление нарушений в развитии ребенка и как можно более раннее начало работы с ним и его семьей. Приоритетом стратегии развития государственной молодежной политики является совершенствование системы реабилитации и адаптации молодежи с особенностями психофизического развития к независимой жизни, в том числе посредством занятий физической культурой и спортом. Беларусь продолжит ответственную и планомерную работу по поощрению и защите прав инвалидов и обеспечению их полного и эффективного участия в жизни общества. Благодарю за внимание.
I thank the esteemed representative of Belarus for her very interesting remarks. And now I would like to give the floor to the representative of the non-governmental organization, Down Syndrome NSW. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. My name's Emily. I'm here from Australia, and it's often a place coined the lucky country, and we certainly are. We do have a national disability insurance scheme, and we've got a range of strategies that are all aimed at striving to enhance the humanity and certainty and equity for our loved ones with a disability. Our civil society is very active, and I think, as you can see at this conference, our Australian delegation very passionate, and our government is open. And I proudly sit here representing my friends with Down syndrome, as well as my sister who has a severe and profound intellectual disability and autism. But she is not here because this building and this conference is not accessible to her at all. My sister is just 1 year younger than me. We grew up in the same household, in the same lucky country, yet the trajectory of our lives is so vastly different. Yet she has this dedicated CRPD to further protect her interests and make sure that she has the same human rights and freedoms that are afforded to all. And by all, I mean all. We know that disability is not homogenous and that our loved ones with intellectual disability are falling significantly far behind across all metrics. The CRPD is not only reserved for a few, for the easy, for the vocal, and for the visible. And we need to really stop expecting the person with a disability to change and to adapt. It is the systems that need to adapt. Specifically to the sub-themes, firstly, the importance of technology cannot be overestimated, especially for our loved ones who may not have a voice but have so much to say. Secondly, to humanitarian emergencies, I am absolutely shocked coming to this conference to hear that people with Down syndrome and intellectual disability are being shot in war zones because they simply don't understand the instructions. Yet the UN has a resolution on easy to understand communication. So this is not only costing our loved ones their voices, but it's costing them their lives. And finally, to employment. It is true that the paternalistic model is permeating. We continue to think that it's a nice thing to do for people with a disability. I, in Australia, enjoy an 83% employment rate. My sister and her friends have a 29% employment rate, 8% of which is in open employment. And to my earlier point that disability is not homogenous, 20% of people with intellectual disability are unemployed compared to 8% of people with other disabilities. Worldwide, our government, arguably the largest employer in the world, public and private sectors are missing out on the skills and talents of 1.3 billion CEOs, leaders, politicians, employees with a disability. And they are ready, willing and able, but that needle has not moved in the 18 years. And money talks. In Australia, we did some economic modelling that if we close that gap, our economy would be better by $43 billion in the space of just 10 years. Finally, intersectionality is important. Health, education, transport. For my sister, just getting to and from her job, she was sexually assaulted daily for months. And it's uncomfortable to say, it's uncomfortable to hear she lost her job as a result. But 1 in 2 women with an intellectual disability are sexually abused today. Our whole ecosystem needs to do better. Accelerated action is not only urgent, it is overdue. As we meet in this place, I urge both the UN and our state parties to lead by example, engage and invest in your civil society, prioritise action over policy paralysis, openly share your progress data, and most importantly, listen. Listen to all people with a disability. Thank you.
I thank the esteemed representative of the NGO Down Syndrome NSW for your very interesting remarks. And now I give the floor to Israel.
Thank you, Chair. Israel is deeply committed to the promotion and protection of rights of persons with disabilities and to full implementation of each of the chapters of the CRPD. During the past year, we have added a requirement for adequate representation of persons with disabilities in government-owned companies, an addition of tens of thousands of potential jobs for persons with disabilities. We continue the work on regulating accessible health services and accessibility of cultural and sporting events. Following our first appearance before the UN Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in Geneva, in which we showcased our accomplishments in implementing the convention, we started constructing a national action plan for the full integration of persons with disabilities in Israel in every area specified in the Convention. During my third year as Commissioner for Equal Rights of Persons with Disabilities in Israel, my country endured a horrific terror attack, which affected all people in Israel, including those with disabilities. They are among the most vulnerable groups who suffer and are most severely impacted during emergency situations. In the spirit of the CRPD, Hamas did not discriminate, committing atrocities against persons with disabilities of all types and ages, from the elderly to small infants. The number of persons with disabilities in Israel categorized as victims of hostile actions, meaning those affected by terror or war, prior to October 7, was around 8,800. Today, it is about 64,000, a staggering 600% increase. The attack required us to urgently shift our focus and devote our vast resources to address the new arising needs of the population, such as emergency treatment and assistance for persons with disabilities, establishment of accessible shelters, distribution of special alert bracelets for those who are hearing impaired, and many more initiatives, all in accordance with Chapter 11 of the CRPD. As a final note, being here this week and listening to the voices in this room, it is shocking to hear how the very entity who is responsible for the situation both in Israel and in Gaza is not condemned, not acknowledged, and not under any pressure. To the arsenal of hostile actions this organization employs against Israel, a new tool has recently been added: deliberate dissemination of completely false data and baseless accusations. The statements in this room have proven many of you have chosen the side of a terror regime who is using these holes as a tool to extend the war and cause further horrors. The Hamas is a terror organization and is responsible for the grave casualties and the entire situation in Gaza today. Condemn Hamas, call for the immediate return of our hostages, call for the cessation of holding women and children as human shields. Thank you.
I thank the esteemed representative of Israel for his remarks, and now I give the floor to New Zealand.
Thank you, President. I begin by acknowledging the recent passing of a beacon of light in the disability rights movement. As a serving member of the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, Sir Robert Martin was the first person with a learning disability to be elected to any UN body. Sir Robert brought the lived experience of people with disabilities to his domestic and international advocacy, reflecting the "nothing about us without us" mantra. We join Sir Robert's family and the disability community in New Zealand and across the globe in mourning his loss. May his legacy live on, and may we continue to strive for a more inclusive future. New Zealand's disability strategy aims to realise an inclusive future. We work hard to achieve this. New Zealand continues to champion disability rights globally and support efforts to remove barriers to inclusion. We are proud to co-chair the UN Group of Friends with Persons with Disabilities alongside Mexico, and co-lead resolutions both in the Third Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disability in situations of risk and humanitarian emergencies, and also in the recent Human Rights Council session on support systems to ensure community inclusion for persons with disabilities. New Zealand welcomes the progress made towards the implementation of the UN Disability Strategy. New Zealand calls for accessibility in all parts of the UN system and the inclusion of persons with disabilities, leadership and involvement in the successful implementation of the strategy. New Zealand particularly welcomes the focus of COSP on rethinking disability inclusion in light of the Summit of the Future. Practices and values which have been core to the development of CRPD, equality of opportunity for all, involvement in decision-making by those most impacted, including the recognition of the role of civil society, and the development of a global infrastructure emphasising human rights. All of these things remain instructive and perhaps more important than ever before in the current geopolitical context. Sir Robert believes squarely in the practices and values, and we encourage meaningful action by states to reflect them in the processes and outcomes ahead of us this year. Sir Robert would also challenge us to focus on the potential of the international system and remind us that he was a survivor, especially in his early years, of a system which took a pessimistic view of what he could achieve. While he was always honest around the challenges facing disabled people, he sought a future which remembered the past but did not replicate it. New Zealand invites the COSP, in memory of Sir Robert, to commit to true equality for everyone and systems and processes which make that a reality. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank the permanent representative of New Zealand for a very interesting remarks. And now I will give the floor to Slovenia, followed by Barbados.
Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates, today the international community thrives on cooperation, solidarity, and humanity. The foundation for cooperation lies in existing and new international agreements, including the Convention. However, adopting agreements is not enough. Each country must strive for their implementation also in practice. From the Slovenian perspective, rethinking disability inclusion is not just a moral imperative, but also a strategic necessity. Disability is not solely a medical issue, but also social, economic, and political one. Additional efforts are needed to embrace perspectives that go beyond the medical definition of disability. Therefore, at both the national and global levels, priority must be given to addressing the individual needs and recognizing their contribution to fostering an inclusive society. When considering the inclusion of persons with disability in society, technological advancement is occurring at a breathtaking pace. This is particularly evident in the area of disability inclusion and in the job market, where new technologies reshape professions and work processes. Slovenia is in cooperation and dialogue with various stakeholders, including disability organizations, research institutions, and other civil society organizations, actively seeking solutions in the areas of accessibility, employment, digitalization, new technologies, and other facets of social life for persons with disability. Faculty of Electrical Engineering of University of Ljubljana, in cooperation with the Geodetic Institute of Slovenia, is conducting a project to explore the everyday challenges faced by persons with disability in various contexts, such as at home, while moving around, at work, and in other solutions, including assessing public services. The goal of the project is to enhance these experiences by introducing new tools, devices, and advanced technology solutions. Mr. Chair, allow me to conclude. Slovenia recognizes that access to disability rights and equal opportunities is crucial for full participation of persons with disabilities. Only thus we can create an inclusive society for all. Thank you.
I thank the esteemed representative of Slovenia for her remarks. And now I give the floor to the non-governmental organization, Down Syndrome Australia. Please, you have the floor.
Good morning. My name is Michael Cox, and I am representing Down Syndrome Australia. A lot of people with intellectual disabilities do not work, and those who do are often in workshops or factories that only hire people with disabilities. This is known as segregated employment. They are often paid well below the minimum wage, and by not working alongside others in the community, this means we are excluded. People with intellectual disabilities have the right to work on an equal basis with others in open employment. I have always found it hard to get a job. We need more employers to see the value in offering people like me real jobs with real wages. What we want to see is people with disabilities should be paid fair and a proper wage for their work, and employers need to understand and commit to inclusion. Salary-graded employment providers should be supported to change so people can move into open employment. Australia's recent Disability Royal Commission recommended a reform for disability employment supports, developing a roadmap to open employment and raising sub-minimum wages. I worked for a very large international company with great inclusion policies. However, the reality was that I had very little support. Companies say that they are inclusive, but they need to be able to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. Organisations like Down Syndrome Australia are doing great work to deliver improvements, but we can achieve more, and we need the government to do more as well. Any work to reform inclusive employment should be done with self-advocates like me involved at every stage. In conclusion, everyone has the right to a meaningful job in a supportive environment at a decent wage. I want a world where people with intellectual disabilities have the same opportunities as everyone else in the workplace and in life. Thank you very much.
I would like to particularly thank the representative of the NGO Down Syndrome Australia for his remarks. And now I give the floor to the esteemed representative of Barbados.
Mr. Vice President, in June 2022, the Cabinet Barbados established the National Advisory Committee for Improving the Lives of Persons with Disabilities, with the mandate to, for the first time, formulate a national policy on disabilities, as well as to craft a draft Rights of Persons with Disabilities Bill. These mandates were completed by March last year, with the Cabinet subsequently in September approving a comprehensive 2023-2030 national policy representing the most progressive, multifaceted and targeted effort ever to protect and advance and promote the full and equitable enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedoms of the estimated 7% of persons who reside with some form of disabilities in Barbados. My country is committed to fostering a national environment in which all forms of discrimination and barriers constraining the realization of the full potential and personal development of persons with disabilities are eliminated. Our government is ensuring that persons with disabilities are provided with the essential opportunities, including accessibility to decent housing and to benefits such as access to trust loans for entrepreneurial ventures, leading to their increased meaningful participation and inclusion in all aspects of Barbadian life. Our government also provides assistive equipment such as wheelchairs and technological devices for persons with disabilities. There is also a policy to retrofit the homes of financially vulnerable persons with disabilities. Our Prime Minister and Finance Minister, the Honourable Mia Mottley, in her budgetary statement this year, has made provision for social security support for persons with a wider range of disabilities than is now presently the case. Our government has pledged to, in 2024, bring before the Parliament legislation domesticating our international obligations in compliance with the Convention. This will, when enacted, provide a legal framework for guaranteeing equality of free, inclusive education and training opportunities, accessible and dignified health care, affirmative action and quota principles in employment, affordable and reliable transportation, reasonable access to buildings, protection from natural disasters, and indeed the empowerment of persons with disabilities in every core area of life. The imminent transformation of our social services institutional framework by the People's Empowerment and Elder Affairs Ministry, with the amalgamation of key departments, including that of the National Disabilities Unit, will facilitate persons with disabilities in accessing wider resources under less bureaucratic circumstances than is presently the case. Barbados looks forward to continuing our mutually beneficial relationship with the United Nations.
I would like to thank the esteemed representative of Barbados for his remarks. And now I give the floor to the esteemed representative of Spain. España tiene la palabra.
Sí, perdón, tenía un problema de accesibilidad que tengo que solucionar. No esperaba que fuera ahora mismo. Perdón, estaba solucionando un pequeño problema de accesibilidad y no podía acceder a mi intervención. Buenos días a todos y a todas. Quiero centrar esta intervención en la primera reforma de la Constitución española de 1978, en el título de los derechos fundamentales, en el artículo 49, dedicado exclusivamente a la protección de los derechos de las personas con discapacidad. Reforma llevada a cabo en febrero de este año. Esta Constitución consagra la dignidad de la persona y el libre desarrollo de la personalidad como claves de bóveda de nuestro Estado social y democrático de derecho. Previamente, durante los últimos años, se había producido la adaptación de legislación interna, tanto la estatal como la autonómica, a la normativa que establece la Convención sobre los Derechos de las Personas con Discapacidad. Paralelamente, la sociedad civil articulada en torno a las personas con discapacidad fue planteando a los poderes públicos la necesidad de acomodar el artículo 49 de la Constitución a la realidad social y a la normativa internacional. Asimismo, en el seno de la sociedad española avanzaba claramente el reconocimiento de las necesidades específicas de las mujeres y los menores con discapacidad. En este contexto, resultaba patente que la redacción original del artículo 49 de la Constitución en su día plasmó el compromiso sólido con los derechos y libertades de las personas con discapacidad, precisaba de una actualización en cuanto a su lenguaje y contenido. Su nueva redacción subraya la libertad e igualdades efectivas, la plena autonomía personal y la inclusión social y los entornos universalmente accesibles. Asimismo, incorpora una perspectiva feminista y la defensa de los derechos y de la infancia y de la juventud. Se manifiesta así que los derechos de las personas con discapacidad son transversales, inclusivos y universales. Esta es la primera vez que se reforma nuestra Constitución española en clave social. Tiene el firme compromiso de ensanchar derechos largamente luchados por la sociedad civil, cuyo papel reconoce también el nuevo artículo constitucional. El trabajo conjunto entre el Estado y la sociedad civil ha servido, por tanto, para extender los derechos sociales. Para finalizar, insistimos en el respeto a los derechos fundamentales y las libertades fundamentales como se recoge en esta Constitución. Recordamos que las guerras son grandes generadores de discapacidades. Instamos a priorizar la paz y la inclusión, solo así se mitigan las devastadoras consecuencias de la guerra. Muchas gracias.
I would like to thank the esteemed representative of Spain, and now I give the floor to Thailand.
Thank you, Chairperson, distinguished delegates. For over 3 decades, Thailand has been committed to the care and development of persons with disability, changing from rehabilitation to empowering, enhancing their quality of life by fostering collaboration with all of the stakeholders to ensure that persons with disability has access to their rights and welfare from state fairly and equally. We have developed a disability registration system through one-stop service centers, engaging families in caring for persons with disability through the Foster Family Project, instead of having them enter welfare institutions, establishing community and local general disability service center. Moreover, educational institutions have developed vocational skill training courses for persons with disabilities and their families, leading to 90% for disability employment in private sectors. In addition, we expect to achieve 60% of disability employment in state agency within 2024. And we provide assistive devices and facilities, auxiliary aids, and personal assistance for persons with disability without leaving them behind. In conclusion, Thailand remains fully committed to promoting and protecting the rights of persons with disability as we seek to achieve to 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development and SDG, as well as prepare for the discussion of the summit of the future. Thank you. ขอบคุณครับ
I thank the esteemed representative of Thailand. Y ahora doy la palabra al representante de Cuba. Por favor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Cuba se enorgullece de ratificar el compromiso inquebrantable con la Convención sobre los Derechos de las Personas con Discapacidad. En un mundo donde la inclusión y el respeto a la diversidad son fundamentales, nuestro país se esfuerza para mantenerse como referente en la protección y atención de las personas en situación de discapacidad. Nuestra Constitución, actualizada en el 2019, refleja claramente este compromiso al fortalecer la protección jurídica de los derechos humanos de este grupo poblacional, para lo cual contamos con un sólido sistema de instituciones, políticas públicas y recursos indispensables para garantizar su plena inclusión y participación en la sociedad. Recientemente se creó la Asociación Cubana de Personas en Situación de Discapacidad Intelectual, lo cual ha marcado un hito importante en nuestro país. Esta asociación se suma a otras organizaciones que trabajan arduamente por los derechos de las personas con discapacidad, promoviendo su autonomía y dignidad. El nuevo Código de las Familias, así como otras normativas vigentes en Cuba, garantizan el pleno ejercicio de los derechos sexuales, reproductivos y familiares de las personas en situación de discapacidad. Su bienestar y desarrollo integral son prioridades indiscutibles para el Estado cubano. El bloqueo económico, comercial y financiero impuesto por el gobierno de los Estados Unidos por más de 6 décadas y su reforzamiento con la inclusión de Cuba en la unilateral lista estadounidense de estados patrocinadores del terrorismo limitan significativamente nuestros accesos a recursos necesarios, incluso para la atención a las personas en situación de discapacidad. A pesar de los desafíos que ello impone, en nuestro país seguimos priorizando dicha atención en la distribución de nuestros modelos y recursos, incluyendo y brindando de forma gratuita prótesis auditivas, ortopédicas, sillas de ruedas y bastones a quienes lo necesitan. Es nuestro compromiso y deber garantizar que todas las personas independientes sean independientes de sus capacidades, tengan igualdad de oportunidades y puedan contribuir plenamente a la sociedad. En Cuba, las personas en situación de discapacidad no son solo beneficiarias de programas sociales, son agentes activos de cambio y progreso. Su voz es escuchada y respetada. Su participación es valorada y promovida. Seguimos avanzando juntos hacia una sociedad más inclusiva y justa para todos. Muchas gracias.
Oh, you will tell us, yes. No.
Okay.
I would like to thank the esteemed representative of Cuba for his remarks. Muchas gracias. Ahora doy la palabra al representante de Nicaragua.
Honorables miembros del Comité sobre los Derechos de las Personas con Discapacidad, representantes de Estados miembros y demás participantes. Es un placer para nuestro Estado reafirmar su decisión y voluntad en la continuidad de la restitución de los derechos de las familias nicaragüenses, en especial los sectores más vulnerables como son las personas con capacidades diferentes, que durante los 16 años de políticas neoliberales impuestas a nuestro país fueron excluidas y marginadas de sus derechos más elementales, el derecho político, civil, laboral, los derechos a la educación, a la salud, entre otros. Es por ello que el Gobierno de Reconciliación y Unidad Nacional es un modelo de equidad y complementariedad que fomenta el cuidado amoroso y responsable de los niños, de las personas con capacidades en espacio de socialización y aportan a las buenas relaciones de personas, familia para una vida digna. Las personas con capacidades diferentes en nuestro país son escuchadas y respetadas. Cuentan con un respaldo jurídico gubernamental del Estado nicaragüense, cuya finalidad es robustecer la defensa de estas personas en diversas instancias. Es, por ejemplo, en el año 2011 se aprueba la Ley 763, ley que promueve la igualdad, inclusión y no discriminación de las personas con discapacidad. El Estado de Nicaragua, a través del Ministerio de Salud, desarrolla programas de atención a las personas con discapacidad, como lo es el programa Todos con Voz, que atiende a protagonistas y su familia. Se han establecido centros de fisioterapias y de rehabilitación a nivel nacional que cuentan con equipos médicos de alta generación totalmente gratuitos. En Nicaragua, la educación es integral. Existen 25 escuelas de educación especial, 50 aulas en diversos municipios en aras de garantizar la educación a las personas con necesidades educativas asociadas o no a la discapacidad. En nuestro país se garantiza el derecho de la participación política en las tomas de decisiones para las personas con discapacidad en igualdad de condiciones. Es por eso que nos encontramos a la vanguardia en la restitución de estos tipos de derechos, que no solamente son expresados en discursos, sino materializados, facilitando recursos financieros para programas y proyectos con partidas presupuestarias específicas, estando completamente nuestro gobierno comprometido en promover una cultura de paz, de esperanza, en una sociedad más inclusiva y sin odio para todos. Muchas gracias.
I would like to thank the esteemed representative of Nicaragua for her remarks. And now I would like to give the floor to the representative of the non-governmental organization, International Council for Education of People with Visual Impairments. You have the floor, please.
Thank you. My name is Todd Reeves, and on behalf of the International Council for Education of People with Visual Impairment, ICVI, I'd like to first thank the chair for this opportunity to speak and now discuss opportunities that have potential to strengthen the quality of inclusion of persons with blindness in the mainstream education system. In recent decades, mathematics instruction for the blind learner has become much more critical due to at least two additional factors. First, as more blind children are enrolled in inclusive educational settings, they are most often taught by classroom teachers who have limited experience in adapting learning materials to accommodate for children with visual impairment. At the same time, advances in assistive technology are opening up a new world of education and career opportunities for blind persons, opportunities that most often require strong grounding in mathematical concepts. In order to address this issue, the ICVI and the Overbrook Nippon Network on Educational Technology developed a publication entitled, quote, Mathematics Made Easy for Blind Children, OnNet, unquote, that is available for free download through the websites for both ICVI and the Overbrook School for the Blind. There are over 600 teacher-made instructional videos supporting mathematics instruction that may serve as teacher resources for the effective learning of mathematics. ICVI has also demonstrated over the last decade how higher education of persons with visual impairment can affect systemic changes in the blindness sector. This initiative, supported by the Nippon Foundation and implemented in countries in East Asia, the East Asia region, has facilitated higher education for over 3,000 visually impaired students who have become role models. This has not only increased the enrollment of children with visual impairment in all levels of education, but also is changing the public perceptions about visual disability. As the global mission is to see that, quote, no one is left behind, unquote, in education, focus on mathematics and higher education in the blindness sector will ensure inclusion in the very real sense. ICVI and the Overbrook School for the Blind are willing to work with the global communities in replicating these positive experiences in other parts of the world. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank Mr. Reeves on behalf of the International Council for Education of People with Visual Impairment for his remarks. Ahora doy la palabra al representante de El Salvador.
Gracias, señor presidente. Reciban un saludo a todas las delegaciones de los estados partes de la Convención sobre los Derechos de las Personas con Discapacidad. El Salvador, como estado parte de esta convención desde el gobierno del presidente Nayib Bukele, está comprometido con la población con discapacidad, trabajando desde la gestión pública para adoptar de manera progresiva las acciones orientadas al cumplimiento y goce de los derechos de las personas con discapacidad. Este día es valioso reconocer el compromiso y el rol de las personas que integran el Comité sobre los Derechos de las Personas con Discapacidad, quienes supervisan la implementación de la Convención con el objetivo de examinar los informes y la emisión de recomendaciones para la construcción de estrategias en favor del desarrollo de las personas con discapacidad y sus familias. Desde el Gobierno de El Salvador impulsamos el Plan Estratégico Eliminando Barreras, el cual tiene dentro de sus 8 ejes de trabajo temas importantes como la transformación digital y el acceso a las tecnologías de información y comunicaciones, que buscan la igualdad y equidad de oportunidades para nuestra población, principalmente orientados a la educación inclusiva, habiendo entregado equipos tecnológicos adaptados y personalizados a partir del año 2022 a estudiantes con discapacidad del sistema educativo especial y regular. La creación del Plan Nacional de Inclusión Laboral para Personas con Discapacidad, ejecutado con el Ministerio de Trabajo y Previsión Social, cuyo objetivo es generar oportunidades de trabajo decente, independencia y mejorar la calidad de vida de las personas con discapacidad y sus familias, logrando por medio de la intermediación laboral la contratación de más de 5,000 personas con discapacidad en diversas empresas. En este gobierno hemos desarrollado e impulsado el trabajo articulado con diferentes entidades, principalmente desde el Consejo Asesor de la Dirección General de Protección Civil, Prevención y Mitigación de Desastres y la Comisión Técnica Sectorial de Albergues, promoviendo el tema de la gestión inclusiva del riesgo ante emergencias, acciones que son atendidas con la ejecución del programa de ayuda humanitaria del CONAIPD durante 2 años consecutivos, formando a más de 800 elementos de las comisiones departamentales y municipales de protección civil. Desde la ejecución de nuestro plan estratégico hemos trabajado progresivamente para generar las bases de una sociedad inclusiva que permita la creación de espacios y oportunidades de participación activa, visibilizando la importancia de una intervención temprana que beneficie a la primera infancia, propiciando su máximo potencial de desarrollo y reconocimiento en la sociedad como sujetas de derechos, teniendo como factor clave el principio de corresponsabilidad de las familias y personas cuidadoras, quienes tienen un rol importante para el desarrollo de las capacidades y habilidades de la población con discapacidad. Desde El Salvador, como Estado parte de la Convención, reafirmamos nuestro interés para generar nuevas alianzas que permitan la implementación de modelos de intervención inclusivos para las personas con discapacidad y que logren transformar sus medios de vida y contribuir de manera activa por medio de su participación en las diferentes esferas de la sociedad. Nuestro gobierno, a través del señor presidente Nayib Bukele, continuará construyendo estrategias de garantía para las personas con discapacidad con el apoyo desde el despacho de la primera dama de la República y sin dejar a nadie atrás. Muchísimas gracias.
I would like to thank the esteemed representative of El Salvador for her remarks. And now I give the floor to the esteemed representative of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is a principle of the state activity of the DPRK to place the interest of the people above everything else and ensure that all people enjoy dignified and proud life. I take this opportunity to point out the policy and the social initiative that the government of the DPRK is consistently taking to promote and protect the dignity, rights, welfare of the person with disabilities. From the first day of its foundation, the government of the DPRK attached great importance to the issues for protection of the right of person with disability and regulate provisions on the protection of the right of the person with a disability under several domestic laws. The solid legal ground for ensuring the right of the person with a disability had been laid by adopting the DPRK law on protection of disabled in June 2003. In addition, unified coordination framework for implementing the policy on protection right of person with disability had been introduced with the establishment of the Central Committee of the Korean Federation for Protection of the Person with Disability in 1998 and National Committee for Protection of the Person with Disability in December 2016, respectively. Under the unified coordination, each person with a disability is placed in the right position on the basis of the personality. In addition, the Korean Rehabilitation Center for Children with a Disability is conducting education in various forms. Furthermore, it is intensifying scientific and technical studies for rehabilitation and providing earlier special education to children with a disability. Indeed, all persons and children with disabilities are fully enjoying happy life thanks to the policies of the most socialist, superior socialist system. Mr. President, it is a consistent position of the DPRK to develop international cooperation and exchange for genuine promotion and protection of the human rights, including protection of the person with a disability. The DPRK remains committed to consistently follow through the people-oriented policy for improvement of the material and the cultural welfare of the person with a disability by upholding people-first policy as its unwavering political idea and fully implement its mission and obligation as a state party to Convention on the Right of the Person with Disability. I thank you.
I thank the esteemed representative of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea for his intervention. But now je donne la parole au représentant du Monaco. Vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. 1,3 milliard de personnes sont atteintes d'un handicap dans le monde, soit 16% de la population mondiale, et environ 80% de ces handicaps sont invisibles. Repenser l'inclusion du handicap nécessite de sensibiliser les populations, lutter contre les clichés et faire tomber les préjugés. En décembre dernier, Monaco a lancé une nouvelle politique nationale pour l'inclusion des personnes en situation de handicap en principauté. Cette politique se décline en 9 domaines d'action. La sensibilisation de la population à tous les types de handicap, l'éducation et la formation, l'emploi et le travail, le logement et la construction, la mobilité et l'accessibilité, l'accompagnement et la prise en charge, l'accès au sport, à la culture et aux loisirs, la communication et la reconnaissance à l'international. De plus, pour faire de Monaco une terre d'excellence en matière d'inclusion du handicap, le gouvernement propose un pacte handipact à l'ensemble des acteurs monégasques destiné à ce que chacun soit prêt à recevoir, à accueillir, comprendre, recruter, éduquer, former et travailler avec des personnes en situation de handicap. Communiquer, sensibiliser et accompagner sont les maîtres mots de notre politique en matière d'inclusion. Des projets ont déjà été lancés comme la création d'un réseau Nothing About Us Without Us avec les associations monégasques pour identifier les difficultés, proposer des solutions concrètes et améliorer les dispositifs existants, la création d'un réseau handicap au sein de l'administration, la mise en place de testeurs des aménagements destinés aux personnes en situation de handicap, la centralisation des informations concernant tous les handicaps pour toutes les périodes de la vie sur le site du gouvernement pour rendre l'information accessible, la création d'un guide d'accompagnement à l'emploi pour les employés et les employeurs, une nouvelle carte priorité handicapée destinée à améliorer la visibilité, une campagne active pour rendre accessible un maximum de commerces et de restaurants en principauté, la mise en place de formations dans la fonction publique pour expliquer et sensibiliser au handicap, et le déploiement d'une application mobile destinée à faciliter les déplacements des personnes en mobilité réduite sur le territoire. Rendre le handicap connu et compris par tous est une étape indispensable pour parvenir à une société inclusive. Nous avançons vers cet objectif à Monaco grâce à une politique pragmatique en lien direct avec l'ensemble des acteurs publics et privés de la société monégasque qui œuvrent au quotidien pour le besoin des personnes en situation de handicap. Monsieur le Président, je conclurai mes propos en ajoutant que dans le cadre du sommet de l'avenir, Monaco poursuit ses efforts pour promouvoir le sport comme outil reconnu du développement durable et, pour le sujet qui nous occupe aujourd'hui, le sport est sans ambiguïté un élément important de l'inclusion des personnes en situation de handicap, au-delà des bénéfices pour la santé mentale et physique. Je vous remercie.
Je remercie la représentante du Monaco pour son intervention. Et ahora doy la palabra al representante de Ecuador.
Hola, muy buenos días. Reciban un cordial saludo de la población ecuatoriana con discapacidad y de parte de nuestro presidente de la República, el máster Daniel Noboa. Al repensar la inclusión de la discapacidad en la actual coyuntura internacional y de cara a la cumbre del futuro, el Estado ecuatoriano resuelve entender que garantizar el cumplimiento y plena vigencia en el ejercicio de los derechos de las personas con discapacidad, contenido en los instrumentos de derechos internacionales y la normativa nacional relacionada con discapacidad, es prioritario. El Ecuador mantiene un compromiso permanente para el cumplimiento de las recomendaciones del Comité sobre los Derechos de las Personas con Discapacidad para la aplicación de la Convención en el país. El Plan Nacional de Desarrollo para el Nuevo Ecuador 2024-2025 marca las directrices de planificación para el diseño y ejecución de políticas públicas que incluyen a la población con discapacidad. Este documento se encuentra alineado en la Agenda 2030 de Desarrollo Sostenible a los objetivos y metas para el monitoreo permanente. Las organizaciones de y para las personas con discapacidad y sus familias a través del tiempo han permitido la formulación participativa de políticas públicas incluyentes en el ámbito de la discapacidad, contenidas en la Agenda Nacional para la Igualdad de Discapacidades, instrumento de planificación de la política pública en discapacidades desarrolladas para este periodo de gobierno, que instruye y orienta la ejecución del presupuesto del Estado en el marco de sus competencias, a través de planes, programas, proyectos y actividades encaminados a entender las demandas y exigibilidad de los derechos de las personas con discapacidad del Ecuador. Los ejes temáticos de la agenda se alinean a las disposiciones de la Convención y se resaltan los logros más relevantes del Ecuador, en concordancia con los desafíos que plantea el COSP17 en lo referente a la cooperación internacional para promover innovaciones tecnológicas y transferencia para un futuro inclusivo, la situación de riesgo y emergencias humanitarias, y la promoción de los derechos de las personas con discapacidad a una vida digna, trabajo y medios de vida sostenibles. Buscamos desarrollar procesos de integración siguiendo las tendencias de cooperación bilateral y multilateral. Muchas gracias.
I would like to thank the esteemed representative of Ecuador for his remarks, and now I give the floor to the representative of India.
Mr. President, let me begin by congratulating you and other members of the Bureau on their election. I assure you of my delegation's full support for your leadership of the conference. Mr. President, the Constitution of India, through its Article 14, guarantees right of equality to all persons, including those with disabilities. India was one of the first countries to ratify the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in 2007. India has an estimated population of about 27 million persons with disabilities. The challenges faced by them are multifaceted, spanning physical, financial, and psychological dimensions that impact their pursuit of a life with dignity. Recognizing the need for comprehensive interventions, India has taken significant steps towards the empowerment of persons with disabilities under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. India adopted a forward-looking legislation on rights of persons with disability in 2016. The legislation expanded the categories of specified disabilities from 7 to 21 and increased reservations for the disabled in government jobs from 3 to 4% and in higher educational institutions from 3 to 5%. Some of the other significant initiatives undertaken by India are the Sugam Bharat Abhiyan to enhance accessibility in government buildings and public transport systems and at airports. 7 national institutes have been set up across India, providing research and development for the rehabilitation of persons with special needs. The National Finance and Development Corporation of India provides funds to persons with disabilities to promote economic development activities and self-employment ventures. The Office of the Chief Commissioner for Persons with Disabilities has been set up to take steps to safeguard the rights and facilities to the persons with disabilities. Mr. President, India has recently concluded a historic general election with more than 600 million voters. A wide range of facilities were provided to make the polling stations more inclusive and accessible to persons with disabilities in order to ensure that they exercise their right to vote. These included obstacle-free access to polling stations, accessible toilets, separate entry and exits, Braille ballot guide, Braille embossed electronic voting machines and voter slips, wheelchairs, as well as free local public transport facility and priority entry to polling stations. Under India for Humanity initiative, launched to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, India has assisted over 40 countries in Asia, Africa, and Pacific Islands by organizing artificial
Yeah. I would like to thank the Deputy Permanent Representative of India for her remarks. And now I give the floor to the representative of the non-governmental organization, Keystone Human Service International. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, delegates, friends from civil society, my name is Genevieve Fitzgibbon, and I am President and CEO of Keystone Human Services International, a subsidiary of Keystone Human Services. Keystone is an international NGO with over 50 years' experience implementing community alternatives to institutionalization of children and adults with disabilities. Our work is driven by partnership with self-advocates and representative organizations of persons with disabilities. Article 19 of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, affirming the right to live in the community, lies at the core of our work. The widespread ratification of the CRPD and the adoption of the guidelines on deinstitutionalization were significant milestones for the disability movement. However, the slow pace of states to enact these guidelines and the continued reliance on institutions continued to prevent the true and meaningful inclusion of persons with disabilities. For children with disabilities, institutionalization has a profound and long-lasting effect on their health, development, and well-being. But without strong and inclusive community services, including supports for families, institutions are too often seen as the only option. Our work at Keystone, done in close collaboration with self-advocates and OPDs, has shown that establishing sustainable, inclusive, community-based services, especially when designed together with persons with disabilities rather than for them, mainstreaming disability and policy frameworks, and strengthening platforms for self-advocacy can lead to the full community inclusion of persons with disabilities. This year's Conference of States Parties comes at a critical point. At the upcoming Summit of the Future, world leaders will adopt a pact for the future, an inclusive future. We cannot build such a future without the full community inclusion of all persons with disabilities. We therefore call on member states to ensure the full participation and inclusion of persons with disabilities and organizations of persons with disabilities in all their diversity, in all efforts to implement the CRPD, drawing on inclusive practices such as the Listen, Include, Respect guidelines. To support community living for all persons with disabilities and all forms of institutionalization and establish inclusive, accessible, community-based services. To transform systems of care for children with disabilities, to fulfill every child's right to live with their families and communities, and to leverage the expertise of family members and direct support professionals in these efforts. Ending segregation is not only possible, but it is the only way forward. Keystone stands ready to support this collective journey towards inclusion. Thank you.
I would like to thank the representative of the NGO Keystone Human Service International. And before proceeding, I would like to make an announcement. The following three speakers will intervene, and then we have to suspend till the afternoon session. So they will hear Costa Rica by a video message, United Republic of Tanzania, and Zimbabwe, and then we will stop. So, ahora doy la palabra al representante de Costa Rica. Per video.
Señor Presidente, con la mira puesta en la cumbre del futuro y con la guía de la Convención sobre los Derechos de las Personas con Discapacidad, Costa Rica reitera su pleno compromiso con el éxito de esta sesión. A través de coordinaciones interinstitucionales y siempre con la presencia de la sociedad civil, Costa Rica ha desarrollado acciones concretas para la inclusión laboral de las personas con discapacidad en los sectores público y privado. Hemos consolidado la Comisión Nacional para la Empleabilidad y el Trabajo. En coordinación con la Fundación 11 de España y con el apoyo del BitLab, desarrollamos el proyecto Por Talento, que incorpora ya 15 empresas de gran tamaño con buenas prácticas de empleabilidad. Toda acción se desarrolla en consideración de las circunstancias tanto de sus familias como de las jefaturas de hogar. Hemos incidido con metas de impacto directo en la Estrategia Nacional para la Empleabilidad y el Talento Humano. De igual manera, participamos en la creación de indicadores de la categoría de discapacidad de los reconocimientos laborales Somos Más del Ministerio de Trabajo y Seguridad Social, entregando este año el primer certificado. Para Costa Rica es fundamental impulsar la aplicación de nuevas tecnologías y conocimientos. Debemos ser contundentes en cerrar la brecha digital que está dejando atrás a la población con discapacidad de más bajos recursos. Debemos promover una inteligencia artificial inclusiva para la creación de nuevos mercados más humanizados y conscientes de la necesidad de la diversidad humana. Debemos accionar para que los costos de las tecnologías de asistencia y los servicios de apoyo sean accesibles. Esto debe impregnar la sostenibilidad de los sistemas de protección social y de cuidados. Los niños, niñas y jóvenes con discapacidad deben de ser parte de estos procesos para que sus vivencias sean fundamentales en la construcción de un presente y un futuro inclusivos. En Costa Rica, la gestión del riesgo se da con la participación de las personas con discapacidad en los procesos de planificación, preparación, atención y respuesta ante situaciones de riesgo y emergencias. Costa Rica reafirma así su compromiso con la inclusión y la protección de las personas con discapacidad y tomamos la decisión de trabajar en conjunto con la comunidad internacional para construir un futuro más equitativo y accesible. Muchas gracias.
I would like to warmly thank the esteemed representative of Costa Rica, and now I give the floor to the representative of the United Republic of Tanzania.
Mr. Chair, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you, Mr. Chair, for the floor. On behalf of the government of the United Republic of Tanzania, I have the pleasure to address this 17th session of the Conference of State Parties to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Tanzania's commitment to the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with a Disability and its optional protocol has been unwavering since ratifying it on 10th November 2009. We have strived to ensure the persons with disabilities are granted the same rights and privileges as all other citizens. The CRPD has provided Tanzania with a broad framework to develop legislation, policies, and programs that aim to improve the lives of the person with disabilities. The Person with Disabilities Act, Chapter 183, Tanzania has adopted comprehensive definition of disability, including physical, mental, sensory impairment, environmental barriers that limit individual participation in society on an equal basis with others. Mr. Chair, according to the 2022 Population and Housing Census, 11.2% of Tanzanian population has a disability. With this data, we have the mainstreaming disability across the government programs, include having specific ministry for the people with disabilities. Inclusion of persons with disability in programming and governance has become a priority, ensuring their meaningful participation and decision-making process. Mr. Chair, as we focus on highly quality statistics and disaggregation of data disability, Tanzania has developed an electronic database system known as a Person with a Disability Management Information System. The system will collect and generate data and statistics that will be used to support the formulation of evidence-based policies as the key to all aspects of the implementation of disability, inclusive policies and programs in line with the Convention on the Right of Persons with a Disability. Mr. Chair, Tanzania has prioritized mainstreaming disability issues into various policies and plans, ensuring inclusivity across different sectors. Hence, we have established disability policy under the slogan, "Nothing about us without us," as the main principle to ensure inclusivity. Mr. Chair, my delegation greatly appreciates this opportunity to reflect on our progress and learn from other delegations on better ways to integrate people with a disability. into their society. We also appreciate the support that Tanzania received from our development partners. And therefore, in the same spirit, we appeal for stronger cooperation in the implementing the convention while leaving no one behind. I thank you, Chair.
I thank the esteemed representative of the United Republic of Tanzania for his remarks, and now I give the floor to Malaysia.
Mr. Chair, Malaysia welcomes the theme of this year's Conference on Rethinking Disability, Inclusion in the Current National Juncture and ahead of the Summit of the Future. As a testament to our steadfast dedication to promoting and safeguarding the rights of persons with disabilities, Malaysia enacted the Person with Disability Act 2008. This legislation comprehensively addresses the registration, protection, rehabilitation, development, and overall well-being of persons with disabilities, further bolstered by the establishment of dedicated National Council for Persons with Disabilities. In our pursuit of fostering greater inclusion for persons with disabilities in the labour market, Malaysia introduced a job coaching program. This initiative offers invaluable support to individuals with disabilities, aiding their seamless integration into the workforce. Furthermore, it equips employers with guidance on implementing universal design principles in office spaces, fostering disability-friendly environments, and promoting the normalization of persons with disabilities in the workplace. Notably, Malaysia has trained 3,061 job coaches between 2010 and 2023 to assist persons with disabilities in their job applications. Complementing our efforts in employment initiatives, Malaysia has launched the Capable and Reliable Entrepreneur Care Program, specifically tailored for persons with disabilities that actively participate or interested in entrepreneurship. This program provides comprehensive training and financial grants. Since its inception in 2022, 64 persons with disabilities have benefited from support under the CARE program. Mr. Chair, Malaysia underscores the paramount importance of coordinated state resources in disaster preparedness, response, recovery and mitigation. National Security Council Directive No. 20, National Disaster Management Policy and Mechanism, outlines the functions and responsibilities of various governmental agencies and NGO in disaster management. Recognizing the unique vulnerabilities of persons with disabilities in times of crisis, the government has meticulously reviewed the standard operating procedures on disaster management to incorporate tailored provisions for their protection and assistance. This proactive approach aligns with Malaysia's commitment under the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015 to 2030 and the ASEAN Agreement on Disaster Management and Emergency Response. Emphasizing the transformative potential of technology in enhancing the lives of persons with disabilities, the Southeast Asia Minister of Education Organizational Regional Center for Special Education Needs, Semeo Sen, headquartered in Malaysia, assumes a pivotal role in enhancing the quality of special education through its comprehensive suite of capacity building, research, innovation, and strategic planning initiatives. Semeo Sen empowers ASEAN special needs educators, students with disabilities, and societies at large. Mr. Chair, the Government of Malaysia reaffirms its unwavering commitment to promoting and protecting the rights of persons with disabilities, a cornerstone of our national agenda. We remain steadfast in our dedication to fulfilling our obligations under the CRPD. Thank you.
I would like to thank the esteemed representative of Malaysia for her remarks, and now we'll give the floor to our second last of our speakers, the representative of Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Chairperson. The overarching theme of the session, which provides us the opportunity to, I quote, rethink disability inclusion in the current international juncture and ahead of the Summit of the Future, close quote, is pertinent as we seek to improve our management of the challenges faced by persons with disabilities now and in the future. The rapid advancement in technological innovations is an opportunity to harness this technology to advance assistive technology innovations for persons with disabilities, more so in situations of risk and humanitarian emergencies. The increasing global threats also disproportionately impact persons with disabilities, hence the need for commensurate responses taking advantage of technological advancement. Allied to this is the need for technology transfer for an inclusive future. In the world of work, promoting the rights of persons with disabilities to decent work and sustainable livelihoods is crucial in advancing the right to occupy space in the labor market, including establishing and sustaining their own livelihood projects in both rural and urban areas. Chairperson, the government of Zimbabwe fully recognizes the importance of promoting, protecting, and respecting the rights of persons with disabilities, guided by robust policies, laws, and strategies. In this regard, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe launched the National Disability Policy, which is aligned to both the Constitution and the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Among other things, the National Disability Policy has sections that are dedicated to international cooperation, assistive technology, risk and humanitarian emergencies, as well as employment and self-reliance. The government of Zimbabwe has put in place mechanisms to ensure that at least 15% of public service employees are persons with disabilities. The private sector and other sectors are also being encouraged to integrate persons with disabilities in employment and to ensure that they are provided with reasonable accommodation in the workplace. Chairperson, we remain open for constructive dialogue and cooperation with other states on issues of disability and with relevant international organizations, as well as with civil society, including in the area of technology, innovations, and transfer. Zimbabwe remains guided by the principle of collaboration with all members of the
I would like to thank the esteemed representative of Zimbabwe for his intervention. And now we come to the last speaker of the morning session, which is the esteemed permanent representative of Iraq. You have the floor.
شكرا جزيلا السيد الرئيس، ونشيد بإدارتكم لاجتماع مؤتمر الدول الأطراف في اتفاقية الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة، والتي تؤكد الحرص على تعزيز حقوقهم الإنسانية والسعي الدؤوب لإدماجهم مجتمعيا وصولا إلى تمكينهم من النواحي التربوية والتعليمية والصحية والاجتماعية والمهنية. لقد كان انضمام العراق أحد الدول الأطراف إلى اتفاقية حقوق الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة الأثر الأكبر نحو إصدار قانون رقم 38 لسنة 2013 الذي يعد الضمان الحقيقي لحقوق المعاقين وحجر الزاوية لتأسيس هيئة حقوق ذوي الإعاقة والاحتياجات الخاصة، الجهة القطاعية الرسمية الراعية لتلك الحقوق والممثل الحقيقي لهم في المحافل الرسمية كافة. ونستثمر هذه الفرصة لتثمين جهود الدول الأعضاء التي تعزز مضامين الاتفاقية وتسعى لتحقيق أهدافها التنموية رغم وجود تحديات من أهمها تزايد أعداد المعاقين نتيجة مخلفات الإرهاب والعمليات الحربية وحروب تنظيم داعش الإرهابي والحوادث وما نتج عنها من تهجير قسري ونزوح للعوائل، فضلا عن عدم معالجة ملف الألغام بشكل جذري. اتخذت حكومة العراق تدابير وطنية إجرائية وتشريعية مهمة نحو ضمان تلك الحقوق، من أهمها المصادقة الرسمية على تعديل القانون 38 لسنة 2013 ودخول حيز التنفيذ بصدور التعديل رقم 11 سنة 2024، والذي غير فلسفة الهيئة نحو قضايا ذوي الإعاقة ومسارها التنموي من مفهوم الرعاية إلى مفهوم الحقوق، بالإضافة إلى التحول للرقم الإلكتروني لوصول المستفيد إلى حقوقه وامتيازاته بطرق ميسرة، فضلا عن فتح منصات إلكترونية خاصة بالشمول ومنصة خاصة بالتعيين للأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة في القطاعين العام والخاص. وتوجه الحكومة برصد مبالغ مالية بتعاون بين وزارة العمل والصحة لتخصيص المعاينات الطبية والأطراف الصناعية للأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة وإطلاق برنامج التأهيل المجتمعي والنفسي، وسعي الحكومة نحو التمكين التربوي والتعليمي والمعرفي من خلال البرامج والخدمات والأنشطة التربوية والتعليمية التي تقدمها، متضمنة تأمين التعليم من المرحلة الابتدائية وصولا إلى الدراسات العليا وبجميع الاختصاصات، وتخفيض الأجور الدراسية والإعفاءات في الجامعات الحكومية والأهلية، وزيادة نسب الشمول لاستيعاب الحالات الإنسانية وصولا إلى تحقيق الإدماج المجتمعي والحد من التمايز والإقصاء على أساس الإعاقة. أخيرا السيد الرئيس أن العراق مقبل على انتهاء التحضيرات
I would like to thank the Permanent Representative of Iraq for his intervention. He was the last speaker of the morning session. We listened to 25 speakers so far, and as already announced, we will suspend now the general debate. We will resume again at 3 o'clock sharp, and the first speaker will be the NGO Validity Foundation. An updated list of speakers will be, of course, made available to you. And we kindly recommend for all delegates to be early in the meeting room, 2:45, 2:50, so to start on time, because we have approximately another 30 speakers who have to intervene. And I would like, before closing, to thank all participants for being very much disciplined time-wise, so they gave us the opportunity to listen as many speakers as we like. Now we will make, I won't even call it a break, we'll make a very small recess for 3 minutes just to prepare the panelists, because we will immediately proceed to our roundtable. Thank you so much. If I can have your attention, if you take your seats, we will start in a very few seconds. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I call to open the Roundtable 3 meeting. I have the pleasure of co-chairing this roundtable along with my civil society colleague, Mr. Ezequiel Kumwenda, who is a civil society representative for the World Federation of the Deafblind. Together with Mr. Kumwenda, we will facilitate this roundtable on the important issues concerning promoting the rights of persons with disabilities to decent work and sustainable livelihood. Ladies and gentlemen, the current global normative framework, consisting of international human rights treaties and development instruments, provides already comprehensive guidance on issues concerning the advancements of the right of persons with disabilities in the spheres concerning decent work and sustainable livelihood. The Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, a core human rights treaty and legally binding instrument, provides us with a strong international norm and standard for all of our 191 state parties. Notably, under Article 27 of the Convention, state parties recognize and are legally obliged to take certain measures to promote those rights, including particularly the right to the opportunity to gain a living by work freely, chosen or accepted in a labor market and work environment that is open, inclusive, and accessible to persons with disabilities. According to the CRPD, states are required to take steps, including through legislation, to prohibit discrimination, to provide just and favorable conditions of work, to ensure equal pay for work of equal value, to promote employment opportunities and career advancements for persons with disabilities in the public and the private sectors, to ensure the provisions of reasonable accommodation in the workplace, to promote the acquisition of work experience in the open labor market, and to promote vocational and professional rehabilitation, job retention, and return to work program. Furthermore, state parties are also required to ensure that persons with disabilities are able to exercise their labor or trade union rights on an equal basis with others, and they are not held in slavery or in servitude and are protected from forced or compulsory labor. To ensure opportunities for sustainable livelihoods for persons with disabilities, state parties to the Convention are required to take steps to promote opportunities for persons with disabilities for employment in the public and the private sector, self-employment, entrepreneurship, and the development of cooperatives and their own business, and to ensure their access to appropriate and affordable service and assistance. Through Article 28 of the Convention, state parties recognize the rights of persons with disabilities to an adequate standard of living for themselves and their families, including adequate food, clothing and housing, and to the continuous improvement of living conditions. The Convention also recognizes the right of persons with disabilities to social protection and to the enjoyment of that right without discrimination on the basis of disability, and state parties are required to take steps to safeguard and promote the realization of that right, including measures to ensure equal access by persons with disability to clean water services and to appropriate and affordable services, devices, and other assistance for disability-related needs, to ensure access by persons with disabilities, in particular women and girls with disabilities, and older persons with disabilities, to social protection and poverty reduction programs. Furthermore, the CRPD requires that states to ensure access by persons with disabilities and their family living in poverty to assistance from the state, including adequate training, counseling, financial assistance, and respite care, and to ensure access by persons with disability to public housing and to retirement benefits and programs. It is also important to take note that in the 2030 Agenda, Member States pledge to leave no one behind and emphasize the responsibility of states to respect, protect, and promote human rights and fundamental freedom for all, without distinction of any kind, including disability and other status. Sustainable Development Goal number 8 reflects the long-standing commitment of the international community to achieving full and productive employment and decent work, as well as equal pay for work of equal value for all, including persons with disabilities. Ladies and gentlemen, over the years since the adoption of the Convention, many initiatives and efforts and the notable progress already made in our countries, nevertheless, the program obtained thus far has been uneven and too slow. Unfortunately, too many persons with disability still encounter a variety of discrimination, exclusion, and physical, social, economic, and cultural barriers that hinder the enjoyment of their rights in the society. too many of them do not have opportunities to realize their full potential to participate in economically and contribute to development. All the enormous evidence shows that persons with disability by law are equally entitled to the rights to decent work, and many of them are willing and capable to engage themselves in the labor market and pursue a decent and sustainable livelihood for themselves and family members while contributing economically to the society. Many of them, and too often, are still facing enormous barriers and lacking opportunity to exercise their rights. Clearly, there are huge gaps between the high level of political commitment and practice on the ground. These gaps are manifested in the lived experience of many persons with disability in many countries and communities in all regions in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, these gaps must be addressed with our action and enhanced effort. Ensuring the rights of persons with disabilities, empowerment to fully participate and gain access to decent work and sustainable livelihoods, it is an imperative for both human rights and sustainable development for all. As we already passed the midpoint in the implementation of the 2030 Agenda and are now in the preparation for the forthcoming Summit of the Future, which is scheduled to take place soon in September this year, the international community has now another potential opportunity to pay special attention to the situation of the world's population of persons with disabilities. And we must do our parts to ensure the realization of their rights, including, importantly, the rights to decent work and sustainable livelihood. In this context, at our Roundtable meeting, which is part of the 70th session of the Conference of State Parties, we as Member States and civil society partners have a unique opportunity to focus our attentions to issues concerning the advancements of these fundamental rights of persons with disability to decent work and sustainable livelihoods. We will review the progress achieved, identify and address existing and emerging challenges, and explore strategies to further promote disability inclusions and the right to decent work and sustainable livelihood for all persons with disability. Ladies and gentlemen, before I give the floor to my co-chair, Mr. Kunvenda, who is my civil society co-chair, I kindly acknowledge that the Bureau received a notice from the International Labour Organization that Mrs. Cynthia Sanel Olowan, one of our panelists who prepared her presentation for this panel, is unfortunately sick and could not be with us this morning. So Mr. Yashin Sanater, senior specialist, is now at the podium and will present on behalf of Cynthia for the ILO. Ladies and gentlemen, now let me present you Mr. Kunvenda and kindly ask him to continue co-chairing the round table meeting. Mr. Kunvenda will first make a self-introduction and then he will recognize and extend a warm welcome to all distinguished panelists of this roundtable. Mr. Kunvenda, over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Sikeres, representative from Greece to UN. Friends from our global disability community, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by introducing myself that I am Ezekiel Kumwenda from Malawi, that southern part of Malawi. I became blind and deafblind in 1990 on July the 9th. This was as a result of the critical brain surgery that I had in South Africa. For the past 15 years, I began my career as a primary teacher. Then I joined Malawi Union of the Blind as the executive director, the position I'm still occupying. I've also been the president of the African Federation of the Deafblind for the past 14 years. I retired from it in 2022. And throughout my career, as I said I've made a tremendous contributions to different organizations of people with disabilities in Malawi. This ranges from the drafting of their constitutions and assisting them in forming the organization based on the disabilities that they have. Ladies and gentlemen, when I was coming here, I just realized that my fingers, were becoming more blind than before. As a result, I could not go through the prepared notes which I prepared, And my colleague David is going to take up so that he should take us through what I prepared. Thank you very much for that.
Today, as a civil society representative and as a person with deaf blindness, I feel greatly honored to co-chair this roundtable along with Ambassador Sekris of Greece. I am also very excited and passionate as our panelists are going to address an important topic that is very dear to me because I've been working professionally in many employment-related projects and gained first-hand knowledge of the challenges and opportunities in this area. So, with no further delay, let me turn to our distinguished panelists. I would like to recognize and extend a warm welcome to our 4 distinguished panelists from this roundtable who are sitting at the podium, starting from my right. We have Mr. Josh Tseng, Digital Accessibility Services at H Empathy from Singapore. Mr. Yasin Samata, who is representing the International Labour Organization's Special Representative to the United Nations. Mr. Michael Cox from the Down Syndrome Australia, and Ms. Mariana Lozano Medina from the Human Rights Watch of Colombia. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to have a focused and interactive discussion, in a moment we will invite each of our panelists to make a presentation for 10 minutes. After the presentations, we will invite delegations and observers to join in an interactive discussion. You may pose specific questions to the panelists or make brief comments or interventions that are relevant to the roundtable discussion. Participants wishing to take the floor are invited to press the button on your desk to request for recognition after the chair opens the floor. When you are given the floor, please unmute your microphone, identify yourself and the delegation of the organization you represent before posing any questions. Please note, all interventions shall be limited to no longer than 2 minutes with no exception. Please avoid reading prepared statements in order to make the discussion to be more interactive and also to allow for a wide participation. Now, let me turn to our distinguished panelists. Kindly please note that when you are making your oral presentations and engaging in the follow-up interactive discussion, you are invited to address one or more of the guiding questions that are listed in the background paper issued for the roundtable. Dear colleagues, it is my great honor to introduce and invite our first panelist, Mr. Yasin Samata, representing the International Labour Organization Special Representative of the United Nations. We all understand that the person who was supposed to present in the first place was Ms. Cynthia Samuel Oronjuni, who has fallen sick. Therefore, Mr. Samata, the floor is yours. Please try to keep your initial oral presentation to within 10 minutes so as to allow for the maximum interaction with delegates and other participants in this meeting. Mr. Samata.
Thank you, Ambassador Sekaris and Mr. Kumwenda, our esteemed co-chairs for this important discussion. At the outset, I wish to convey the ILO Special Representative's apologies for not being able to be with you today. She wanted me to convey her steadfast commitment on the promotion of the rights of persons with disabilities. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, ILO data continues to show that much more needs to be done to improve the employment opportunities of persons with disabilities. In fact, 7 in 10 persons with disabilities are outside of the labor force compared to 4 in 10 persons without disabilities. The labor market participation rate of persons with disabilities is generally 30 to 40 percentage points below that of persons without disabilities. The employment gap for women with disabilities is similar, but as the general labor market participation rate of women is lower than that of men, the labor market participation rate of women with disabilities is particularly low. Worldwide, persons with disabilities are overrepresented among those who are self-employed. In developing countries where the informal economy tends to be the biggest part of the national economy, people with disabilities are also overrepresented among workers in the informal economy, leading also to a lack of social protection. Where relevant wage data are available, they show that there is a disability wage gap, most of which is not actually explained by differences in educational achievements or age, but indeed by unequitable treatment of workers with disabilities. A particular concerning statistic which applies to all regions is that of youth with disabilities, who are twice likely to be neither in employment, education, or training compared to youth without disabilities. In some regions, this means that up to 1 in 2 youth with disabilities is neither in employment, education, or training. Article 27 on work and employment of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities remains far from being a reality for many persons with disabilities worldwide. More needs to be done to improve the labor market situation of persons with disabilities. Such improvements require both disability-targeted actions, but this is even more important also comprehensive and effective mainstreaming of the rights of persons with disabilities in general initiatives like youth employment promotion, vocational training, making use of the job opportunities in the digital and green economies, to name just a few. I'm pleased to share with you the multi-pronged positive actions which are contributing to a move in the right direction. The ILO collaboration with private sector employers, spearheaded by the ILO Global Business and Disability Network, has significantly boosted the employment of persons with disabilities within business communities worldwide. This global network has been instrumental for over a decade in developing, identifying, and disseminating exemplary corporate practices in disability inclusion, thereby fostering a more inclusive and diverse workforce. At the global level, the network currently comprises 40 leading multinational enterprises from diverse sectors, 6 international non-business entities with disability expertise, as well as the International Disability Alliance. At the country level, 40 national business and disability networks have been established in all continents, especially in the Global South. These national networks provide employer-led, country-level platforms for small and medium-sized enterprises, nationally or regionally operating companies, as well as local branches of multinational enterprises for peer-to-peer exchange and support on disability inclusion issues. Furthermore, the ILO Global Business and Disability Networks offers a free web-based self-assessment tool that helps companies to identify gaps, prioritize corrective action, and access human rights-based technical guidance and support on the inclusion of persons with disabilities. Some of the latest topics and practices that have been addressed in this network include the risks and opportunities of artificial intelligence in recruitment, self-identification of employees with disabilities, as well as accommodation for neurodivergent workers. At its 11th Global Annual Conference in November this year, this network will launch 2 knowledge products. The first is on the importance of including disability issues in the company's environmental social governance efforts, and recommendations on disability-related key performance indicators in this area. The second is on disability inclusion in supply chains and their opportunities to contribute to decent work for people with disabilities. For a few years now, disability-inclusive climate action has received much more attention. The ILO has been contributing to this important development in collaboration with other UN entities and the International Disability Alliance. While much of the attention in this area is devoted to the negative impact that climate change has on persons with disabilities, the focus of the ILO is to ensure that persons with disabilities can play an active role in the just transition to a low-carbon economy, and that people with disabilities get access to green jobs that this transition is already creating. Another area of relevance for the ILO's work on the inclusion of persons with disabilities is in the care and support economy. For working-age persons with disabilities who require personal support, having this support and having it provided in the way in which persons with disabilities require will make the difference between being able to work or not. Coinciding with this Conference of State Parties, the International Labour Conference in Geneva is holding a general debate on the care economy, and we look forward to the outcome document which will define the work of the ILO in this area for the coming years. Through the work with business, which I mentioned earlier, the ILO contributes to fighting this widely held misconception that the only option for persons with disabilities in developing countries is work in the informal economy. The ILO has recently started a collaboration with the World Trade Organization, the UN Conference on Trade and Development, and the International Trade Center to promote more attention to disability inclusion in the context of trade. A first event on this will happen at the Aid for Trade Conference in Geneva later this month, and a second event is planned for the WTO Public Forum in September. Much more progress has been made over the last years on disability-inclusive social protection schemes. The ILO, together with UNICEF, has been at the forefront of this important work to ensure that people with disabilities are not left behind in social protection policies. Much more of this work has indeed been funded by the UN Partnership on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And in many countries, non-contributory disability benefits are incompatible with this work. This means that people with disabilities then lose disability-related social benefits when they earn an income. And faced with this dilemma due to poor policy design, persons with disabilities end up either not working or working in the informal economy. We insist that disability benefits need to be compatible with wage employment, as these social benefits will cover the extra costs of living with a disability in typically inaccessible and exclusionary environments. While much progress has been made to mainstream the rights of persons with disabilities in the work of the United Nations system, I think it is fair to say that there is still more that needs to be done to ensure that persons with disabilities are fully included in the most relevant global initiatives. The Global Accelerator on Jobs and Social Protection for Just Transition, as well as the Global Coalition for Social Justice, both of which the ILO continues to be a significant proponent of, are examples of global initiatives that need to lead by example when it comes to the inclusion of persons with disabilities. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Yasin Samata from our International Labour Organization. That is a very, very comprehensive presentation. I now, ladies and gentlemen, introduce to you the second panelist, Mr. Josh Singh, Digital Access from Singapore.
Okay, all right, okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on an issue that I hold very close to my heart. When I lost my eyesight at the age of 16, about 10 years ago, inclusive employment was hardly a topic that anyone knew or cared about. A doctor even told me that I had no hope of furthering my studies and that my only option for a career path would be to be a massage therapist. To be told that that's your only option at age 16, I thought my vision impairment meant that I had no future and that I was destined to fail as a person because of my disability. I'm fortunate to live in a time now when societies and governments are increasingly discussing and thinking about issues related to inclusive employment and independent living for persons with disabilities like myself. Today, I'm happy to share with you what we've learned in Singapore from our efforts to champion inclusive employment for persons with disabilities, some of the lessons we've learned along the way, and some of the gaps that we have yet to address. First, we need to discuss how we can get persons with disabilities gainfully employed in the first place. At the national level, our goals in Singapore for inclusivity for persons with disabilities are outlined in the Singapore Enabling Master Plan 2030. This is a roadmap to chart our progress forward in terms of building a truly inclusive society. It spans many different areas, including accessible healthcare, infrastructure, education, recreation, and of course, employment. Our aim is to elevate the rate of employment for persons with disabilities to 40% by 2030. We're fortunate to be able to make progress in this area, despite many challenges, including the COVID-19 pandemic. The employment for persons with disabilities in my country has risen for the ages groups of 15 to 64 from 28.2% in 2019 to 32.7% in 2023. One major factor for this success has been some of the employment-related schemes that have been introduced by the government and championed to increase employment for persons with disabilities. One such initiative is the Open Door Program. This was introduced in 2014 and was further enhanced in 2020. Through this program, persons with disabilities like myself are able to receive free job matching and job coaching services and post-placement support at these jobs for up to 1 year. The government shoulders the burden of paying for all of these services, ensuring that there's no financial stress and burden that's placed on the individual. The same Open Door program also provides aid to employers who are looking to be more inclusive, so there are substantial training grants and job redesign grants for these employers. Up to 90% of training grants for supervisors and co-workers can be provided in order to upskill these employers and ensure that they're able to provide an inclusive and accommodating workplace for persons with disabilities. These measures are meant to reduce the friction and hesitation that employers have when it comes to hiring persons with disabilities. There are still perceptions that persons with disabilities are difficult or expensive to accommodate for at the workplace. In a 2019 survey conducted in Singapore, 58% of respondents had positive views regarding persons with disabilities at the workplace, but 42% of people still had negative or neutral views on the topic. We therefore see the need for schemes such as the Open Door program to provide ways to subsidize the cost of hiring persons with disabilities, get them into workplaces, and reduce the perception that persons with disabilities are unable to contribute meaningfully to the economy. Speaking of people with disabilities at the workplace, people like myself are unable to function at the workplace if we do not have the appropriate skills to contribute to the jobs that we are hired for. So employability is one of the key areas that we're looking at in Singapore as well. Through Skills Future Singapore, which is our skills training initiative implemented in the country, there are a growing number of customized courses that are offered to persons with disabilities with specialized accommodations made for them. Grants are also provided to training providers to encourage them to implement these changes to make their courses more accessible. These courses empower persons with disabilities with the skills to be employable and potentially to pivot to high-growth sectors in their career, such as media and technology. To subsidize the cost of courses taken by Singaporeans, all Singaporeans, including persons with disabilities, are provided an open credit of 500 Singapore dollars or $370 at age 25. So again, this is provided to everyone, including persons with disabilities. This open credit can be used to offset the cost of acquiring courses and certifications that are accredited under the Skills Future program. Building upon these efforts, Singapore also introduced a new pilot program called the Enabling Business Hub, championed by SG Enable. The hub is built closer to residential areas so that employment services can be provided closer to the homes of persons with disabilities. The hub is a place where career services can be rendered so that persons with disabilities can receive job matching, job coaching, and find career placements that suit their interests and skill sets. However, despite our progress, there's still many areas to improve. There's a need to increase the awareness and understanding that employers have about persons with disabilities and their capabilities at the workplace. More needs to be done to dismantle stereotypes and overcome biases that still exist in our society. For example, in a 2019 survey that was conducted in Singapore, older and less educated people still mostly held the perception that persons with disabilities are only suitable to conduct simpler jobs, which is simply not true. To bridge this gap, accessibility needs to be implemented in our lifelong career and skills training programs, like Skills Future Singapore. And these programs need constant review and enhancement. We need to ensure that these courses are not only available, but made accessible to a variety of disability types and persons with disabilities. Persons with disabilities also need the right access and, more importantly, the right training to use assistive technologies at the workplace. More can be done to improve the literacy rate of persons with disabilities, workers at civil service organizations, educators, and employers in understanding how assistive technologies are integrated to work for persons with disabilities. Also, besides tracking job placements and employment rates, which is a one-dimensional way of viewing employment, we also need to ensure that persons with disabilities are able to maintain and attain career progression, mobility, and job satisfaction. From Singapore's experience of promoting inclusive employment, we have learned that it's a long journey and that many partnerships need to be fostered along the way in the government sector, in the business sector, in the civil service organizations, and most importantly, among persons with disabilities ourselves. Personally, I'm in the process of creating my own company, which I formed last year with my team, and we're looking forward to a bright future of inclusive employment in the coming years. I urge CRPD member states to think about how we can foster these partnerships moving forward so that we can recognize the aspirations and the abilities of persons with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josh. This is indeed very brilliant, and I wish I could be in Singapore, because once I'm there, it means many people with disabilities are going to be employed with a digital access. Ladies and gentlemen, I now want to introduce to you Mr. Michael Cox, a swimmer from Down syndrome, Australia. You know, many people with disabilities can be employed in different jobs like swimming. So Michael is going to give us his presentation on that one, so that maybe we can also follow suit. Over to you, Michael.
Hey everyone, I'm here to talk about employment. Most people with intellectual disabilities who are in the workforce take part in workshops and factories that only hire people with disabilities. This is known as salary-graded employment. Often they are told there are no other options. There are approximately 20,000 people working in salary-graded employment, and approximately 75% of these have intellectual disabilities. Very few people in salary-graded employment transition to open employment. People in salary-graded employment are also often paid well below the minimum wage. There is strong evidence that people with intellectual disabilities can work within open employment, and that open employment leads to better outcomes than salary-graded employment. However, even in open employment, people with intellectual disabilities are often underemployed and underpaid, and the opportunities and supports for people to get a good job at a good wage are hard to find. My experience has been that I felt like the company policy did not turn into a caring workplace. I sometimes felt that I was just there to tick a box, which is unfair. People with disabilities have the right to work on an equal basis with others in open employment. Inclusive employment leads to better outcomes for people with disabilities. Yet, that is not what most people with intellectual disabilities in Australia experience. I've also found it hard to look for jobs that I know that I can do. We need more employers to see the value in offering people like me real jobs with proper wages in a supportive workplace. We believe that by improving pathways to open employment, providing the right supports and information, we will see a transformation of the sector. We want to see a transition to fair wage systems. People with disabilities should be paid a fair and proper wage for their work, and related welfare and support systems should be redesigned to support this. Improved support for employers to ensure people with intellectual disabilities can be included in their workplaces. Employers need to be supported with information and training to ensure that they can support people with intellectual disabilities in the workplace. The community perception of what it means to employ someone with disabilities in the organization needs to be improved. I worked for a very large international company with great inclusion policies. However, the reality was that I had very little support, and the staff really did not understand why I was there. They didn't even want me there. Some companies say that they are inclusive, but they need to be able to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. A better support for transition from schools into urban employment. Often schools use salary-graded employment as work placements for students with intellectual disabilities. This limits their ability to develop workplace skills and fully explore the options. Work experience should be provided within open employment for all students. An open employment first approach to disability supports. Disability support should focus on building skills to support transition to open employment. Supports to participate in salary-graded employment should only be considered after all options have been explored. This includes long-term support within workplaces and support for more specialized disability employment support providers. Support to transition from salary-graded employment. Salary-graded employment providers should be supported to grow their capacity to build their skills of people to transition to open employment, and the providers should become more inclusive. The Australian government has recently announced further support to both providers and advocacy organisations to support this. For example, I would love to have my own business where I can help people be their best. I have a passion for helping people, and I know that I have a lot of skills to do this. It would be really good if there was support to help people like me set up our own businesses and to be more independent. Australia's recent Disability Royal Commission supported many of these areas, recommending a reform of disability employment supports, developing a roadmap to open employment, and raising sub-minimum wages. Everyone has the right to a meaningful job in a supportive environment. The more people like me have these opportunities, the more independent we become, and the richer society becomes. Our rights, our passions, and our dreams are the same as everyone else's in Australia and across the world. We can achieve more to improve employment outcomes for people with intellectual disabilities. We want to work with people so that we can get to a world where people with intellectual disabilities have the same opportunities as everyone else in the workplace and in life. I'm very lucky because I grew up with a very supportive family and a very supportive sister who is here today. She's helped me so much in my employment. She's done several video video resumes to get me into open employment. She's an amazing sister, and I really love her a lot. And without the help of my family and my adorable, lovely sister, who is amazing in every single way, I really love my sister and I really love my family. So thank you very much.
that is Michael Cox from Australia. He is also a research assistant from the University of Queensland, who is also studying the quality of life for people with Down syndrome there. That is excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, I was somehow worried that, you know, three speakers, three presenters, all of them were men. So I was saying that, are we not going to have women? So ambassadors just, no, the woman will be the last speaker. So most of the time when the person is the last to speak, it means he's able to take everything. So ladies and gentlemen, I have the privilege to introduce to you Madame Mariana Rosina Medina from Human Rights Watch in Colombia to say something to us. Over to you, Madam.
Good morning to all. I'm Mariana Lozano. I'm thrilled to be here today to share a piece of my story and discuss how support for people with disabilities can be structured to enable meaningful participation in society, including the job market. This is a story about overcoming social barriers, embracing acceptance, cultivating self-love, and relentlessly pursuing opportunities. I am a 27-year-old woman with an intellectual disability, and I am privileged to speak to you today not only as the current holder of the Marca Bristol Fellowship from Human Rights Watch, but also as a disability rights advocate with lived experience. Let me begin by clarifying. Disability is not an illness. We are valuable individuals endowed with various abilities, capable of making decisions and contributing positively to our communities. However, we encounter numerous social and attitudinal barriers that limit our daily participation and active engagement in society. When I was 4, my parents were informed that I could not attend a bilingual school because I would be incapable of speaking one language, let alone 2. Then at age 11, they were told I wouldn't graduate high school. These individuals focused solely on my limitations, whereas my family and supporters recognized and nurtured my strengths. Today, I have successfully completed my education. I am fluent in both English and Spanish. I held a job with the necessary support to excel, and I'm continually learning how to advocate for disability rights. Time has disproved those who doubted me due to their ableist prejudices. It has shown that with resolute support to include us in society, people with disabilities can thrive just like anyone else. But my story is not the only one I wish to share with you today. There are exemplary practices that society can adopt to ensure accessible work environments for people with disabilities. The government of Iraq, for instance, has legislation that mandates employment quotas in the public and private sector for people with disabilities. Unfortunately, research by Human Rights Watch in Iraq has shown that the government is failing to meet these obligations, a common issue in many countries. The CRPD Committee General Comment 8 recognizes employment quotas as one of the possible methods to promote employment for people with disabilities. Such quotas should be affirmative actions aimed at integrating historically marginalized groups into the workforce, ensuring they can exercise their rights. However, effective implementation and follow-up are essential, and currently these are lacking in Iraq. Quotas themselves are often insufficient to dismantle or address barriers to employment faced by persons with disabilities, and if used, should be paired with enforcement of other non-discrimination and equality legislation to avoid tokenism and segregation of people with disabilities in the workplace. Despite these challenges, there is room for hope. Muwafaq Al-Kafahi, head of the Iraqi Alliance of Disability Organizations, IADO, conducts workshops to educate employers about the employment rights of people with disabilities, and encourages them to hire accordingly. Following one such workshops, Muhammad Ali Al-Mayahi, CEO of Bab Alga Bakeries in Baghdad, employed 5 deaf workers. Impressed by their performance, he expanded this initiative, now employing nearly 30 deaf individuals and advocating for other businesses to follow suit. In many countries, including Iraq and my own, Colombia, significant barriers to the inclusion of people with disabilities remain, nevertheless with suitable programs from both public and private sectors. Improvements can be made. For instance, in Colombia, the Transition to Adult Life Education Program OAD by the NGO COSP17 in partnership with Universidad del Rosario teaches young adults with disabilities essential life skills and rights, fostering a supportive community and belonging. Thanks to such programs, I have been able to assert my rights, gain a unique educational experience, and integrate fully into society. Today, I manage my finances, live independently, and make my own decisions. Moreover, I am part of a supportive network that I can rely on when needed. Both the employment program in Iraq and COSP17, the networks of Colombian families, demonstrate that with genuine opportunities, appropriate support, and believe in our abilities, people with disabilities can surpass obstacles, meet high expectations, and achieve significant societal contributions. We live in a world that often professes equality and inclusion. That should mean that all human beings, regardless of our impairments, deserve respect and dignity, equal access to education, meaningful employment opportunities, and the ability to live independently and with dignity. As a Marca Bristow Fellow, I am preparing myself to advocate for the rights of people with disabilities more vigorously. My goal is to raise awareness among governments, civil society organizations, the private sector, and society at large about our rights. We need empowerment, supportive networks, and real opportunities for inclusion to lead dignified, independent, and autonomous lives. Today, I call on you to contribute actively to fulfilling the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. These conventions allows us to demand our rights, effectively participate in society, and continue striving for a more inclusive world. Based on the points previously mentioned, I would like to make the following recommendations. First, regarding inclusive education, it is necessary to implement high-quality inclusive educational systems that adapt to the individual needs of students with disabilities at all levels, including pre-primary, medium, and higher education. More opportunities for higher education should be opened up for young people with disabilities, allowing them to develop professionally according to their interests and abilities, and thus have access to decent work. Second, employment for all. Employment is not only a matter of equity, it is a fundamental right that allows us to demonstrate our skills and talents and provides us with the opportunity to contribute and be an active part of society's workforce. Most importantly, it is our vehicle towards our independence and autonomous life. Countries should regularly collect statistics on the number of people with disabilities and their employment rates. Establish a monitoring and evaluation mechanism to ensure the working conditions and wages of employees with disabilities are on par with those of other employees. Establish a monitoring and reporting mechanism for government ministries to periodically report on their performance in meeting unemployment quotas that may be established for people with disabilities. Governments should create more possibilities that promote formal and decent employment with support systems for people with disabilities. Let's work together to build a world where everyone in all our diversity is recognized. We deserve the opportunity to live full, autonomous lives, to be part of society, and to realize our dreams just like anyone else here. Supporting this journey is essential as people with disabilities are fundamental pillars of our societies. Thank you very much.
That is, that was very good, Mariana. Let me also thank my fellow panelists, that is to say, Michael Cox from Australia, Mariana Rosina Medina from Colombia, Josh Seng from Singapore, and Yasin Samada from International Labour Organization for the wonderful presentations. I think we have learned something from it, and I think if we can apply some of these things, I think persons with disabilities are going to have more decent work. Ladies and gentlemen, I now hand it over to my co-chair, a Greek ambassador to UN, Sekeris. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kuwenda Ezekiel. And I would like also for my part to thank our panelists for the extremely important issues they raised and touched today, which I think are very, very important to the further implementing the convention and taking measures to be able to improve the livelihoods and all other relevant issues. Now we come on the second part. We have around 45 minutes till 1 o'clock, which will be devoted to Q&As and to our panelists. So here with the ample help of Eric Zank, who is from the Secretariat, and most of you who know him, I can allow me to say he's the heart of soul of the CRPD, and he's extremely helpful to member states and to us members of the bureaus. So you can push the button, and then you will see a green light flashing, so that means that you are inscribed. And here Eric, with his able guidance, he will give me the names, and I think the idea is to have as many speakers heard. So if you can limit your intervention questions to 2 minutes, I think it will be helpful. So because I think it's the more we hear, the better it will be also from a panelist, but also for the roundtable as a whole. So are we have now?
We can. I saw the first on the Dominican Republic.
Okay, so the Dominican Republic, but please just state your name if you like, and your organization if you are not for a member states, and ask also a specific question and make your intervention, but please for 2 minutes. Thank you so much. Dominican Republic.
Sí, buenas tardes. Catherine Rodríguez del Consejo Nacional de Discapacidad, República Dominicana. Pues agradecer la oportunidad, el espacio a los panelistas, y quiero justamente mencionar algo que decía Mariana en su ponencia, y es cuando hablamos de inclusión laboral, ciertamente en República Dominicana tenemos una ley, tenemos incluso una cuota laboral de un porcentaje para el sector privado y un porcentaje para el sector público. Sin embargo, tenemos grandes brechas a la hora de alcanzar dicha cuota cuando hablamos del tema de inclusión educativa o educación inclusiva. Cómo las personas con discapacidad pueden competir en el mundo laboral con las carencias que vamos teniendo de la educación inclusiva. Entonces, es una gran barrera, a pesar de que se han hecho ciertos esfuerzos, avances, justamente sobre todo en educación preuniversitaria, pero ya de educación secundaria, educación superior, pues va presentando mayores barreras para las personas con discapacidad. En ese sentido, nos encontramos actualmente haciendo un levantamiento de la accesibilidad de las universidades para ir logrando ese acceso a nivel superior de las personas con discapacidad. Pero esto tiene todos unos temas integrales, ¿verdad?, que tienen que ver incluso con el costo de la vida, con acceder a la universidad, con el pago de la matrícula, pero también pensar en el pago del intérprete, que muchas veces es más costoso que el mismo pago de la matrícula. Nos encontramos como país dando respuesta a esta realidad y bueno, hemos empezado, ¿no?, esta ruta, este camino, que un poco escucho que es más o menos la realidad de los demás países. Y en ese sentido, pues, entiendo que está mi duda. ¿Cómo podemos hacer para ir cerrando un poco esa brecha de formación de las personas con discapacidad?
Thank you so much for the intervention. I have Ecuador in my list. I mean, Ecuador spoke also in the general debate, but very happy also to make an intervention here as well at the roundtable. Thank you so much. Ecuador, you have the floor.
Buenos días. Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Es importante para el Ecuador entender el tema del trabajo. Es así que nosotros también manejamos un mínimo del 4% de personas por cada 25 empleados que tienen las empresas dentro de nuestra ley. Sin embargo, se considera la inclusión laboral no solamente de las personas con discapacidad, sino de padres, madres o los representantes legales de niños, niños y adolescentes con discapacidad, así también como parientes cercanos y representantes legales de personas con discapacidad severa a través de la figura de sustitutos debidamente acreditados por el Ministerio de Trabajo. A nivel de Ecuador también trabajamos un eje muy importante que es con la alianza con Ban Ecuador para otorgar créditos a personas con discapacidad y sustitutos para la puesta en marcha de los emprendimientos, también con la asesoría y el apoyo para estos emprendedores en la elaboración de sus planes de negocios. Si bien es cierto, a todos nos afectó la pandemia, nosotros realizamos un seguimiento exhaustivo a la estabilidad laboral de las personas con discapacidad y sus sustitutos. Este difícil periodo nos recordó la importancia de fortalecer nuestras políticas y redes de apoyo para asegurar la estabilidad laboral en tiempos de crisis. Realizamos constantemente inspecciones laborales para garantizar que se dé el cumplimiento del 4% de inclusión en las empresas. Por último, nosotros elaboramos la Guía de Derechos Humanos, Inclusión Laboral y Buenas Prácticas para las Personas con Discapacidad. Este manual, adaptado como curso virtual en nuestra plataforma virtual de discapacidades, ha servido muchísimo a los servidores públicos y privados para que se demuestre el compromiso con la formación continua y la sensibilización sobre la inclusión laboral. Manejamos muchas garantías para el aseguramiento hacia la parte laboral.
Thank you so much. And now I give the floor to the representative of Guyana. Guyana, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Ariane Mangar, Director of Disability and Rehabilitation Services at the Guyana's Ministry of Health. The government of Guyana is committed to promoting the rights of persons with disabilities, which is a reflection of our commitment to inclusion and equality. We have programs and policies which we've implemented to remove barriers that hinder the full participation of persons with disabilities in our society. There's a continuous improvement in access to education for more persons with disabilities so that they may be employed in both the private and public sectors, including through the government's part-time work initiative and the open doors, much like in Singapore. This enables them to work alongside their peers, thereby promoting accessibility, inclusion, and equality in the workforce. Mr. Chair, education, sports, vocational training, and skills training lead to economic empowerment and entrepreneurship are all critical areas of Guyana's efforts to encourage participation in work life. Government has implemented supportive measures such as cash grants for business development, access to training and equipment, free hearing aids and mobility aids, low-cost prosthesis, and other assistive devices. As Guyana continues to make significant investments towards education, financial independence, and the protection of the rights of persons with disabilities, we underscore the importance of evidence-based practices and which would be informed by data. This conference is an important opportunity for the sharing of best practices and further collaborations as we advance efforts to ensure that the sustainable development goals are achieved and no one is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now it gives me particularly pleasure to give the floor to the representative of Turkey. Please.
Mr. President, at the outset, we would like to thank to all panelists for their valuable contributions. Decent job opportunities on livelihoods are vital for all persons, including persons with disabilities. In this line, in the National Action Plan on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities covering 2023-2025, the government has envisaged to diversify and strengthen employment models in open, inclusive and accessible environments to provide reasonable accommodations to support self-employment and to provide financial benefits such as income support and tax arrangements for persons with disabilities. In this respect, job coaching system continues to be expanded across the country, and legislative work has reached to significant stage. Besides, financial support is provided for reasonable accommodation in the workplace through the levy fund. To encourage self-employment of persons with disabilities, startup capital and management trainings are provided. Additionally, income tax dedication are applied at varying rates depending on the severity of disability to support the expenses caused by disability. Furthermore, trainings for the staff of the public institution is to be initiated to support the work adaptation of persons with disability in this public sector. We must emphasize that different employment models can be developed through multilateral partnership to enable persons with disability participating in society as equal, proactive and self-sufficient.
Okay. Çok teşekkür ederiz. Thank you so much. And now the next speaker on my list is Canada. You have the floor. Canada is not here or doesn't want to take the floor. Let's move to the next.
Merci à tous les experts.
Okay.
Les droits des personnes en situation de handicap, y compris le droit à un travail décent et à une subsistance durable, sont bien reconnus dans la Convention relative aux droits des personnes handicapées et le programme 2030 de développement durable. Les personnes en situation de handicap sont confrontées à de nombreux obstacles, notamment le manque d'accès à un emploi et les milieux de travail inaccessibles. Elles font également souvent l'objet de discrimination et d'exclusion. Ainsi, le gouvernement du Canada est déterminé à éliminer ces obstacles et à ne pas laisser ces personnes pour compte. Pour ce faire, le gouvernement a mis en place plusieurs initiatives clés, notamment la loi canadienne sur l'accessibilité et la politique d'aide internationale féministe du Canada. Lors du forum Génération Égalité, le Canada s'est engagé à dégager 100 millions de dollars canadiens pour régler les problèmes liés aux soins non rémunérés, notamment pour les personnes en situation de handicap dans les pays à revenus faibles et moyens, auxquels le Canada offre son aide sur le plan international. Le Canada est prêt à lancer sa stratégie d'emploi pour les Canadiens en situation de handicap afin d'aider les gens à décrocher de bons emplois et à progresser dans leur carrière et les employeurs à créer des environnements de travail inclusifs. Plus tôt cette année, le gouvernement du Canada a annoncé Équivision, dont l'objectif consiste à évaluer les écarts salariaux qui vont au-delà des questions de genre et à sensibiliser les gens sur les obstacles qui freinent les personnes issues de groupes sous-représentés tels que les personnes en situation de handicap dans les milieux de travail sous régie fédérale. Le Canada est conscient de la valeur de ces partenariats avec d'autres pays et avec des organisations internationales telles que l'Organisation internationale du travail et l'Organisation de coopération et de développement économique, ainsi qu'avec les pays du G7 et du G20. Nous avons bien hâte d'apprendre ce que les autres parties mettent en place. Et la question qu'on a pour vous, comment les gouvernements peuvent-ils inclure davantage les personnes en situation de handicap dans les discussions menées avec les employeurs du secteur privé? Merci.
Je remercie chaleureusement le représentant du Canada. And now I give the floor to a representative of a non-governmental organization, Women Enable International. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. I am speaking on behalf of WDDF, Women Gaining Ground Consortium, Raising Fame, Women Enable International, and National Indigenous Disabled Women Association. It is not possible to effectively address labor market participation of people with disabilities without an intersectional approach that combines disability and gender mainstreaming in laws, public policies, and budgetary allocation. International cooperation is also highly required for create self-employment of women with disabilities in labor market. Education is the building blocks for women and gender diverse with disabilities to be able to access the labor market. Globally, girls and women with disabilities are less likely to be able to access inclusive education and face sexual, emotional, and physical violence and harassment, thus they are not able to complete their educations. This results in them to being able to compete with others to enter in decent job and enter in labor market. The higher risks of exposure to violations continue in the labor market make significant impact on employment. So livelihood and the labor market policies should address prevent gender-based violence. Moreover, it is important to recognize women with disabilities in unpaid and low-paid care work. Evidence shows that women are significantly contribute to the unpaid care sector and are primarily caregivers. We need to embrace that HR impact in the labor market. Intersectional approach would mean ensuring labor laws and disability and gender equality policies are harmonized and women with disabilities are exercised.
I thank you so much for your intervention. Thank you so much for your intervention. And now I give the floor to the esteemed representative of Georgia.
Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I am Buba Lomashvili, Deputy Minister of Justice. It will not be a surprise, especially for this audience, if I say that due to my personal life experience as a disabled man, I am, I was, and I will be the biggest and tireless supporter of the people with disabilities. Therefore, this is priceless pleasure for me to be here in front of you and discuss about the best practices of the Ministry of Justice of Georgia. My ministry is one of the leading state bodies in the terms of protecting the rights of persons with disabilities. Activities implemented by the entire system of the ministry are based on the principles of each article of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. On institutional level, the Ministry of Justice annually developed action plans which are officially approved by the order of the Minister of Justice. Documents that are created on the basis of the extensive discussions and intensive involvement of the persons with disabilities and their organizations, who also fully participating in the monitoring process. Within the framework of the action plan, the Ministry of Justice has implemented a number of activities in terms of legal status of the persons with disabilities, training of employees of the system of my ministry on the rights of the persons with disabilities, and the etiquette of communication with them is ongoing process. I am proud to say that last 3 years, the number of employed people with disabilities in my ministry has doubled. As of 13 June 2024, about 60 persons with disabilities are employed in the system of the Ministry of Justice of Georgia. My ministry and its agencies are adapted for the disabled persons, both in terms of infrastructure and electronic programs.
Sorry, Mr. Deputy Minister, I mean, we not feel very well to cut the micro, but it's the same rules for all. But thank you so much for your intervention, and also for the efforts of your country, which is also a member of the Bureau in the CRPD, together with us and others. So thank you so much. And now we continue. Next speaker is Australia, please.
Is it on? Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Robin Shannon. I'm the Deputy Secretary for the Department of Social Services in Australia. And I just wanted to make a brief statement to emphasise the Australian Government's commitment to a more inclusive Australia where all people with disability have an equal opportunity to gain and maintain employment. This is a key pillar of our 10-year Australia's disability strategy. our national disability policy framework that is driving action at all levels of government to improve the lives of people with disability. One of the key elements of Australia's disability strategy is actually a piece of work around changing community attitudes. And if I were to refer to the contributions, the excellent contributions of all of the panel members, it's very clear that both conscious and unconscious bias is a critical factor in ensuring there are sufficient employment opportunities for people with disability. As Michael pointed out, you know, it's so important for your co-workers and employers to give people with disability the chance to make the contribution in the workplace that we know that they can all make. So this is a critical part of our strategy going forward. I would just mention briefly two reforms. One is a series of reforms the Australian government is making to supported employment. As Michael described, we do have a significant sector of employment for people with disability which is segregated, and we are very motivated to transform that sector of our employment labour market. And the second key reform are significant reforms to our supported but specialist employment services, which provide a range of supports to people with disability to help them prepare for work, to place them in work, to help them maintain their job on an ongoing basis. And a key part of that.
I'd like to thank you very much, Ms. Shannon from Australia, for her remarks. And now I give the floor to the representative of the European Union.
Dear Mr. President, despite an increased focus on equality in employment, only about 50% of persons with disabilities in the European Union are in employment. Of these 50%, many work part-time, retire early, and work in low-quality jobs. The European Union has prioritized the employment of persons with disabilities in its European strategy for the rights of persons with disabilities by adopting the Disability Employment Package. So far, we have issued guidelines for employment services, a catalogue of positive practices on hiring perspective, and a guidance for adult learning, and we are discussing setting targets. We believe that there are several reasons for the disadvantaged situation of persons with disabilities in the labour market, including a lack of awareness and the knowledge amongst employers about the legal obligation on equality and occupation, and about available national and regional resources and support. A great challenge also lies in the misconception and stigma towards persons with disabilities. Mr. President, what thought does the panel have on possible action by public actors and civil society organizations to remedy these challenges?
I thank the representative of the European Union, especially for posing a direct question. And now I give the floor to the representative of Panama.
Secretaría Nacional de Discapacidad. Primero, felicitar a los panelistas por el buen desarrollo de este tema e insto a que entre todos nos podamos apoyar con esas buenas prácticas. Prácticas las cuales todos tenemos obligación en el artículo 27 de la Convención. Sin embargo, se sigue dejando atrás a más del 80% de personas con discapacidad en edad de trabajar a nivel mundial. Porque en la mayoría de los países, los empleos para las personas con discapacidad, especialmente a las mujeres, están caracterizados por condiciones de trabajo inaccesibles, que más que dignificar, perjudican. En Panamá se impulsa y promueve el emprendimiento, estableciendo alianzas en el sector privado, movimientos sindicales y las agencias internacionales de desarrollo. A través de los 23 centros del Instituto Nacional de Formación Profesional y Capacitación para el Desarrollo Humano, se capacita con plataformas de aprendizaje permanente, beneficiando también a las personas con discapacidad. En cumplimiento de la Ley 15, se realizan inspecciones periódicas y así velar por el cumplimiento del 2% mínimo de trabajadores con discapacidad dentro de su fuerza laboral. Con base al último censo de población y vivienda, fueron registradas 29.000 personas con discapacidad económicamente activas. El Ministerio de Trabajo Laboral continúa con reclutamientos mensuales focalizados en lograr más inserciones laborales. Además, se cuenta con un programa de mejoramiento de la empleabilidad de personas con discapacidad orientado a promover la integración en el mercado laboral por medio de un proceso de intermediación laboral. Por lo que he podido escuchar, todos coincidimos con que estos logros conviven con importantes desafíos, que sin duda es fundamental superarlos y pasar de las palabras a la acción para que nadie, mucho menos las personas con discapacidad, se quede atrás. Gracias.
I would like to thank the distinguished representative of Panama for her intervention. And now it's the time again for the intervention of a non-governmental organization, People with Disabilities Australia. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Giancarlo De Vera, representing People with Disabilities Australia. We are the largest DPO in the Southern Hemisphere, and with support from the Australian Government, represent all people with disability, including LGBTQIA+ people with disability in Australia. The right to decent work and the right to sustainable livelihood is a right for every person. This must include LGBTQIA+ people with disability. When one considers research has found that a third of LGBTQIA+ people with disability have a disability compared to 1 in 4 non-LGBTQI+ people with disability, the challenges stemming from the intersectionality of disability, sexuality and gender identity significantly impacts the economic security of LGBTQIA+ people with disability. Decades of pernicious discrimination and prejudice has denied LGBTQIA+ people with disability to fully participate at work, resulting in the notable lack of inclusive best practices and policies that recognise and accommodates the unique needs of LGBTQIA+ people with disability in the workplace. Today, I urge distinguished delegates and civil society to consider approaching this discussion with an intersectional lens, a lens that promotes every person, regardless of their sexuality and their gender identity, can realise their right to decent work and sustainable livelihoods. The international community we formed today here at the United Nations was born out of the principle of equality and non-discrimination. We must not deny this right on the basis of sexuality or gender identity. With the economic security that comes from decent work comes further freedoms. Everyone, including LGBTQIA+ people with disability, deserve to be free. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much for your intervention. I would like to announce that because of time restraints, we are approaching to the end. We will listen to one more speaker, and then we will give the opportunity also to a panelist to say a few words and to the wrap-up. So the last speaker for this roundtable is Jamaica, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I am Dr. Norman Dunn, Minister of State and Minister of Labour and Social Security in Jamaica. Jamaica is building a truly inclusive society where persons with disabilities are integrated to our country. In promoting the rights of persons with disabilities to decent work, we have implemented policies such as the Code of Practice on Employment, the Code of Practice on Education and Training, cash grants and assistance with assistive aid devices. We have our flagship program, social program called the PATH program, which is the program for the advancement of health and education, where persons with disabilities are supported with bi-monthly cash grant. We have enacted the Disabilities Act 2024 that promotes the rights of persons with disabilities and prohibits discrimination. We have also established the Disabilities Rights Tribunal 2024 that offers redress to persons who believe they have been discriminated at the workplace. We have a national policy in the public service to employ at least 5% of persons with disabilities in the recruitment pool. We are, in fact, building a truly inclusive society, and our mantra that no one is left behind is true to us. Keeping true to our motto, Jamaica, out of many, one people. I thank you.
I thank the esteemed representative of Jamaica for his intervention. Now we come to the last phase. I will now give the floor back to our panelists to respond to maybe some questions, to make a final intervention as briefly as possible. And we start with Mariana, please, if you like. Thank you.
So I would like to say, what are the barriers for women with disabilities that they face additional challenges in finding decent and meaningful employment? So certainly, women experience multiple discrimination. First, for having a disability, and then for being women. That is why when the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities was designed, it was deemed necessary to include a specific article on the rights of women with disabilities. Additionally, various parts of the Convention emphasize the need to establish policies to support women, including Article 27, which addresses employment. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marian. And now, Michael, your turn.
Wow, those are some really powerful questions to answer. I've got a few things that I probably need to say to be able to answer those questions. Segregated employment for people with intellectual disabilities needs to come to an end. People with intellectual disabilities being paid as low as $4 an hour needs to also come to an end as well. Employers need to become serious about employing people with intellectual disabilities. They need to understand that it can be a benefit for their business. They need to walk the walk, not just talk the talk on inclusion. We need to reform support systems for people with intellectual disabilities and for employers. Wage systems need to be reformed so that everyone is paid a proper wage. And the big one is self-advocates like me. I know I'm pretty good at doing what I do, but we also need other people as well to be included when it comes to these reforms that the government is doing. What I really want to see is a world where people with disabilities are respected and they're loved by not just you guys, but the community and people with employment. It saddens me to see what is happening at the moment in Australia. It's just terrible, isn't it? But I believe that if we come together and unite, that we can make a change and an impact in workplaces, and this won't just affect their businesses, but it affects our entire lives. This is important. It's important to be who you are, and it's important to be able to be heard and to be listened and to be treated with respect, love, and kindness. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, dear Michael. I can see closely here your family and friends watching you, and I think you made them proud. And if I'm allowed to say, you make all of us proud within this room. Thank you so much. And now I turn to my left, and it's the turn of Yosh. Mr. Yosh, it's your turn, please.
Okay, thank you. Michael raised some very many good points. You stole some of mine, so I'll try to provide some unique perspectives. I would like to touch on hopefully two aspects, if time allows. The first is the distinguished delegate of Canada raised a question about how can we facilitate better conversations with the private sector, and I think this is one area where there's actually a lot of opportunities to do things a little bit creatively. So employment is one of the desired goals that we have, but how do we reach that point? And a lot of the work, at least that I have encountered in Singapore, where I live, has been about bridging that gap and creating the first touch points. So maybe employment may not be an immediate outcome, but it's hopefully one that can be facilitated in the long term. And one of the programs that comes to mind, specifically in my country, is a mentorship program that is championed by our focal disability agency, SG Enable, where they get some of the largest companies and multinational corporations in the country to provide upper-level management or senior level staff who are very experienced and want to give back to the community to see if they would like to mentor a young person with a disability. And maybe Singaporeans are very generous with their time, but I think the response has been very surprising in that a lot of these people are willing to give their time to mentor people with disabilities. And like I said, it may not lead to an immediate employment outcome, but it fosters that conversation between higher level executives and persons with disabilities to show that it is possible for people in my community to hopefully reach higher aspirations. So that's an idea. It's a mentorship program, could potentially be the start of inclusive employment efforts. Another area that I wanted to touch on is on social participation, because inclusive employment is an aspect of this, but also recreation. And I think it's an important learning tool for enabling persons with disabilities to realize what is possible. For example, video games. I think a lot of people, even people in this room, may be surprised to learn that people with blindness like myself actually do enjoy playing video games. It's just that we can't. And we deserve to have fun as well. So gaming and recreational activities are an important way to facilitate learning on what is possible given your disability, and even exploring assistive technologies to enable participation on online spaces, in games, and in other activities like sports. So just some food for thought. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Josh, for your very interesting, concluding remarks. And now, last but certainly not least, I'll give the floor to Yashin from the ILO to make his concluding remarks. Thank you.
Thank you for your engaging questions and contributions, in particular from our esteemed panelists, as well as the ongoing efforts shared by member states at the country level. Today's discussion highlighted both the challenges and the positive strides we're making towards ensuring decent work and sustainable livelihoods for persons with disabilities. And obviously the data and examples we shared underscore the critical need for the ongoing and enhanced efforts, both targeted and mainstream, to create truly inclusive labor markets. In light of some of the comments made, it's crucial to remember the significance of the ILO Convention 190 on violence and harassment in the world of work, which plays a vital role in protecting the rights and dignity of workers, including those with disabilities. Additionally, given comments made on quotas, I wish to add that while quotas for the employment of persons with disabilities are an important step, they're not enough on their own. We must ensure that these individuals not only enter the workforce, but also strive within it with equal opportunities for retention and career development. To address the question of how governments can ensure discussions with the private sector entities, it's essential to also establish structured and continuous dialogue platforms, in particular with small and medium enterprises. Governments can create advisory boards or committees that include representatives from the private sector, disability, advocacy groups, and other relevant stakeholders. And obviously, regular meetings and collaborative forums can facilitate the exchange of ideas, best practices, and challenges, including learning from the ILO's Global Business and Disability Network. Additionally, incentivizing private sector participation can further encourage meaningful engagement and commitment to disability inclusion, like my colleague just noted a very good example of. To conclude, Mr. Chair, the ILO remains committed to collaborating with our partners to drive these initiatives forward, including through the World Social Summit in 2025, titled as the Second World Summit on Social Development, to leverage the power of networks and innovate practices, certainly to foster a more inclusive future for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Yashin. And now allow me, before concluding, also on behalf of my peer co-chair Ezequiel Convent of the World Federation of the Deafblind, before thanking you, to make a short summary of what we have discussed in this roundtable. 6 brief points. First, various interventions describe the way barriers that persons with disabilities still face in entering the workplace, from stigma, discrimination, and segregated employment to accessibility barriers and lack of support. The data shared by ILO at the beginning of this panel reflects this bleak reality. 7 in 10 persons with disability are outside of the labor force, a much higher rate than for persons without disability. The exclusion of women with disabilities in the labor force is even higher. Second point, youth with disabilities are twice as likely as youth without disability to be neither in employment, education, or training. This is particularly concerning. Youth with disabilities are being left behind. To compound the traditional so-called barriers, artificial intelligence brought to new risks that can undermine equal opportunities in recruitment and emerging sectors, such as the digital and the green economy, still often exclude persons with disability. Third point, all intervention in this roundtable stress that more needs to be done to improve the market situation of persons with disabilities, using both targeted action as well as mainstreaming approaches. Barriers to education need to be removed in all levels of education. Persons with disabilities need to have access on an equal basis to all employment. Work environments need to be made accessible, and employers need to be supported and trained in making the workplaces inclusive of persons with disabilities. Fourth point, care and personal support need to be provided to those who need them to allow persons with disabilities to work. Persons with disabilities need to have access to the assistive technology they need so that they can work. Wages for persons with disabilities need to be at par with wages for persons without disabilities. Social protection should not impede persons with disability to work, but be designed to promote the employment of persons with disabilities. The misconception that persons with disability can only work in the informal economy also needs to be addressed. And data on persons with disabilities and employment should be regularly collected to inform policy making and programming. Fifth point, it was encouraging to hear about initiatives to address these challenges, like job coaches, career services, workshops to educate employers, networks of employers, or peer-to-peer exchange of support to disability inclusion issues, and self-assessment tools to identify gaps in disability inclusions in the workplace. All in all, as a general would say, comment and concluding remark, I would like to thank all of you for the participation, especially our panelists, you, the speakers, and also would like to thank DESA and especially Eric Zank and all his team for assisting us, the members of the Bureau, in being able to be part of this extremely important roundtable. I wish to you success in the further deliberations and see most of you again this afternoon. Thank you so much. This meeting is adjourned.